I don't know that there's been any family in wrestling, either related for real or professionally, that had as much impact, as much reach, and as much influence as the Graham family did.
Graham was the hardest punch in wrestling history.
Eddie Graham was not only a great wrestler and a great promoter, he was a visionary.
Eddie's championship wrestling from Florida. It was built on wrestling, and the main events were violent. He gave the people the circus.
Eddie Graham coming back into that ring after killing.
Eddie Graham was a titan of professional wrestling who ruled his era and passed on his iconic legacy to his only son, Mike.
The son of any great athlete, they've got the scrutiny on him. But Mike Graham didn't take shit off anybody.
I think maybe he felt like he had to be as good as his father.
Mike Graham followed in his father's footsteps to wrestling greatness and also descended into his own dark world of pain, addiction, and grief.
The wrestling culture is very cutthroat. You have to have this thing about you where nothing's going to break you.
He was under tremendous pressure from so many different angles.
Mike kept shit to himself, too, like his father. The apple didn't fall far from the tree.
It all gets pushed under the rug. In certain families, who are you supposed to go to for help?
The tragic legacy of a wrestling dynasty, haunted by self-destruction and suicide.
It is with a deep sense of regret that I announce the untimely death of a friend, colleague, and a leader.
It was like somebody dropped a bomb on all of us.
Grandfather, father, and then the kids. That runs in the family genes, right?
Once that spotlight's gone, or once you don't have that ring, like, it's emptiness.
Championship Wrestling from Florida was one of the most respected and successful wrestling promotions of modern times. The legacy of the Graham family in Florida is they meant professional wrestling to millions of people all over the state for almost 30 years. One member of the Graham family was on the card or in the main event or behind the scenes in the glory years when they were selling 1 million tickets a year just in the state of Florida to see live matches. And their TV ratings were Super Bowl level.
I guess I was used to it. Like, when you don't know what's different, it's just what your life is. And I just knew that that was a huge part of, like, my grandfather and my dad's life. I am Nicole Gossett, and Eddie Graham was my grandfather, and Mike Graham is my father.
And that's Eddie Graham in the center of the ring now, his son Mike watching very carefully.
Every Sunday, they'd have matches at the Eddie Graham Stadium. And the first phone call in the morning was my grandfather calling my dad to talk about the night. We'd wake up and we'd walk into, like, our family room to see who was crashed out on our couch for a little while, you know, because we had different wrestlers sleeping on our couch at times. Magnum TA, Terry Allen, when he first started, he slept on our couch, and he was so sweet. And so I was pretty accustomed to having big, boisterous personalities and people around. The one that scared me was Andre the Giant. When he came, like, crouching through our front door, he freaked me out, yeah. I was scared. That was the family business.
Everybody wanted to be on the roster of Championship Wrestling from Florida, both for the money, for the weather, for the girls, and also to learn from Eddie Graham. I'm Jim Cornette. I've had a 40-year career in professional wrestling, but for even longer than that, I've been a collector and an historian. Eddie could make you believe that he was the toughest man in the state of Florida, which is exactly what most of the fans believed. He just had a magnetism about him, and he was somebody that you wanted to listen to, and if you were working for him, you wanted to follow. A leader, a general.
Well, I was born up in the Tennessee mountains, brother. If you didn't have heart and desire, you were finished to begin with. So I ain't gonna lay down and quit. That's my bottom line.
There you have it. The comments from Eddie Graham. There goes a wrestler, and one hell of a man.
Eddie was a legend in Florida. He could get a reaction just walk into the ring. My name is Kevin Sullivan. I worked for the Graham family for decades, and I've been a wrestler for over 50 years.
Your nightmare is just starting.
Eddie was about 5'10" and a half, wide shoulders, bleached blonde hair, and he just had a presence about nobody else was ever in his class. The genius of the business, our Einstein. Eddie was from the hills in Chattanooga. Very difficult life. His father died young.
Eddie came up through the College of Hard Knocks. Just a good old tough country boy. My name is Dottie Curtis, and I am the wife of the late Don Curtis. Don was a very, very knowledgeable wrestler. Don and Eddie met back in around 52, I think it was. They became friends, and Eddie asked Don to come up here to Jacksonville, and he was the promoter up here for quite a few years.
Now it's Graham with a good solid chop across the throat.
Eddie Graham is probably one of the finest wrestlers that was around in his time. I don't think there'll ever be another Eddie Graham.
Though born Edward Gossett, Eddie's wrestling career is forever altered when he adopts the Graham name from one of the ring's top stars.
The originator of the Graham wrestling family dynasty was Dr. Jerry Graham. He had the bleached hair and he carried himself like a star, and what's more, he had the gift of gab.
We will be the International Tag Team Champions as soon as that match comes off, and it's going to be the greatest match ever.
Brother teams in New York were over at the time. But if you could find a guy that looks something like you, nobody's reading your birth certificate, just say it's your brother. Eddie Gossett was in Texas wrestling as Rip Rogers, and a lot of people told him, "You look like Jerry Graham." Jerry and Eddie connected, and in 1958, the Graham brothers, the Golden Grahams, as a team, ruled the roost in wrestling in the biggest TV market in the country, where wrestling is already red hot, being presented in the most famous arena in the world, Madison Square Garden.
Dr. Graham has just the treatment for that tired, nagging backache. Eddie performs the surgery while Jerry looks on approvingly.
You could sell out Madison Square Garden, you could sell out anywhere.
Eddie and Dr. Jerry made a fantastic duo, aided by everybody, and just really drew the crowds in.
And just main eventing Madison Square Garden, they were probably making close to 6 figures per year in 1958 and 1959, and that would translate into somewhere over $1 million apiece in today's money.
With money and fame to burn, Eddie and Jerry are box office sensations. But before long, Dr. Jerry's behavior outside the ring becomes even more notorious than his matches.
Dr. Jerry Graham, as big of a genius as he was in wrestling, was an alcoholic, was mentally ill, and he got in a lot of trouble and caused a lot of trouble. Jerry Graham, to impress fans, used to light his cigars with $100 bills, or he would walk into a biker bar and walk right up in front of a guy and say, "Hey, my name's Balls, you got any?"
But the most shocking incident involving Jerry Graham transpires years later in his hometown of Phoenix, Arizona.
One day he got the word that his mother was sick and in the hospital. And he called the hospital and he told the doctor that his mother better come out of that hospital in good health. And then she died. So Dr. Jerry Graham shows up with a 12-gauge shotgun, a .38 caliber revolver, and an 8-inch long hunting knife, and appears in the intensive care unit where he fires a shot at the doctor, and then goes down the hallway and grabs the gurney that his mother's body is on. And as he's taking it down the hallway, here come the orderlies and the interns, and they're trying to tackle him. So he grabs his mother's corpse and slings her over his shoulder. And he's screaming, "I just want to take her and bury her." Jerry Graham was so good at his chosen profession, and he was also completely, utterly insane. After 2 years, Eddie Graham could not put up with being partners with Jerry Graham anymore, and he had to leave the greatest spot that he'd ever had.
In 1960, Eddie uproots his family from New York and settles in Tampa, the hub of championship wrestling from Florida.
He was a visionary. He said to himself, "I know my capabilities as a wrestler. I can get over here. I can be the star. And this whole thing can be bigger." And over the next 25 years, not only did he become the most successful wrestler in the history of Florida and the most popular, but he worked his way into being able to buy into the promotion, then taking it over completely and expanding wrestling in the state of Florida, and made it the place that everybody wanted to go to wrestle and to learn.
Eddie probably bought the territory just knowing that he had the wherewithal, the brains, the connections with the talent to take the territory to another level. Hi, I'm B. Brian Blair, and I started wrestling in Florida in 1977. Got my start right here in Tampa.
Blair has him up, the airplane spin.
The Armory was hot. I would call it like Saturday Night Fever. It was so entertaining.
Tonight, we're in a jam-packed Armory in Tampa, Florida, the home of championship wrestling.
All the wrestlers from Championship Wrestling from Florida gave their all every Tuesday night at that place. Growing up in Tampa, wrestlers were just huge. Fans would come up to them. We couldn't go anywhere without someone wanting to talk to my dad or my granddad.
And it was telling that Eddie Graham would have continued good relations with Vince McMahon Sr. and later on with Vince McMahon Jr. He was someone that the other promoters all called to ask for advice.
The president of the NWA, Eddie Graham, now describing the conditions in the contract. Both wrestlers are to post a...
The National Wrestling Alliance was an organization of promoters from regional territories all over the country. There was no major decision made in the NWA without consulting Eddie Graham.
He was president twice. He was well respected, but he was a complicated guy. Eddie would do some violent things.
He was a tough person. You either did what he told you to do or you were out.
Now, there was the side of Eddie Graham that did want to keep the credibility of the wrestling business, and guys were expected to lay shit in to make people believe what they were doing was real.
Eddie Graham was a stickler. He said, if anybody here gets their ass kicked by a mark, you're fired. In other words, you get your butt kicked by a wrestling fan, you're out of here. You protect the business at all costs.
I guess you could call it maybe a horror chamber down there at the sportatorium, but fellas would say they want to wrestle, and they figured all you had to do was get in the ring and perform. They'd put them through their paces, and, you know, some of them were just, they couldn't take it.
I had to do things that I'm not proud of, that I didn't like to do. A couple of them I did. Well, they wanted you to break people's bones.
Somehow, this guy got booked for TV. He said, oh, I've worked some local shows. I'm a butcher by trade. And I see Eddie's ears perk up like a dog's. And the guy says, I'm going to make you look good. I'm going to tell all the guys you're a nice guy. So the guy drifts off in the corner, and he said, if he doesn't come back bleeding, you're through. I kept my job.
Your marching orders were to make this guy bleed.
I had a family. At that period, it was my livelihood. Wasn't his livelihood. He was going to go back to that job no matter what. Worst thing I probably ever did.
Eddie's hard-nosed ambition to dominate the wrestling trade is all-consuming, but his desire for power is far from his only flaw. Wrestler and promoter Eddie Graham is known for his unrelenting drive, limitless ambition, and his determination to legitimize the business.
Eddie was a go-getter. He had a portfolio of a lot of property. He expanded outside of the wrestling business. He wanted to write checks rather than receive checks.
Eddie wanted to elevate the perception of wrestling. That's where he started getting involved with the Boys Ranch and with charitable organizations in every town and every county in Florida. They're furthering amateur wrestling programs.
Eddie was a rock star in Florida. I mean, politicians were kissing Eddie's ass. To be seen on Championship Wrestling from Florida when you're running for office was a big deal. And I'm sure Eddie got favors from that too. Eddie was involved in everything.
I think Eddie put a lot of pressure on himself. He never wanted to fail in anything he did. And for most of the things that he did, like flying and being a boatsman and that, diving, he was fabulous. His only problem was that alcohol got to him. One night, Eddie was drinking and decided he was going out on his boat. And his son, Mike, was panicking because he took off in the car. And so Mike, as a young boy, he got on his bicycle and he drove to a cross bridge over the water. And his idea was he was going to jump off that bridge and onto the boat because he was afraid his father would kill himself out in the water. And thank God he missed the boat. I mean, it wasn't there. Because if he'd have jumped off of that bridge, he would have possibly drowned in the water. That scared Eddie. That was one of his sobering moments, if you want to call it that. Mike idolized his father, and vice versa.
I believe you told me that your own boy does quite a little wrestling.
Well, yes, he does. In fact, I'm hoping he'll take the state tournament in the 95-pound division.
Now, how old is he?
He's 10 years old.
Even though he's a lovable father, he was demanding. He put high expectations on Mike.
And then when my dad started wrestling, he obviously started wrestling under Mike Graham. So maybe that gave him a little bit more of a chip on his shoulder at times.
At 222.5 pounds, Mike Graham.
He gave me all the tools to get as good as I could get before I turned pro. But even at that, the pressure really, and a lot of it came from him. And I loved going someplace where he wasn't going to be because I knew I could go out, I could wrestle, I could come back, and it wasn't constant scrutiny.
My grandfather did throw my dad in the ring, be like, okay, let's see what you got.
Graham breaking it up again, arm drag takedown.
I remember my dad always saying, Nicole, don't worry. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. So he was not intimidated by anyone's size.
Mike was shorter and didn't have the same over-the-top personality, but he had the wrestling knowledge in there from growing up with Eddie Graham.
And there it is. There's a fall right out of the blue. Mike Graham.
So he was a very good worker. He was in plenty of great tag teams, but the attention never went on him specifically. And to be honest, he didn't want to be the top guy. He didn't want to be the big star because people would have said it was because of his father.
Mike swallowed a lot of shit, and let things go. He did it as well, if not better, than anybody I ever saw being a promoter's kid to blend in with the guys.
And Graham after Kevin Sullivan.
I had the pleasure of being his partner, and I had the pleasure of being his opponent.
Can't believe this.
They're going to hang him. I get violent, Sullivan. I'm waiting for you.
If you got on Mike's bad side, you were on his bad side, and he wasn't going to back down. He knew the pressure he was under. He couldn't go home if he got his ass kicked.
My grandfather was bloody all the time, right? My dad also was bloody. So mornings in my house, my mom would get my brother and I up. My dad would be in bed because he'd get home so late and he was just hungover, beat up. And we'd go in to kiss my dad goodbye in the morning. And there'd be tape on his forehead with blood and bite marks on his finger and the smell of alcohol oozing from his body. And we'd kiss him goodbye. See you later, Dad. Have a good day.
Let me turn right now to Mike Graham because I know he's...
As the 1980s dawn, Mike Graham joins Eddie in steering the ship at Championship Wrestling from Florida, as the company becomes a breeding ground for wrestling legends, including Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, and Dusty Rhodes.
I am the dream. I am the man. Go on with it, baby.
Dusty was like the original surrogate son. He loved Dusty, and Dusty loved him too.
Dusty Rhodes, of course, was always around. We'd all go out to the beach together. Dusty would always say that fat looks better tan.
Eddie Graham took Dusty under his wing, and he became the most popular wrestler in the history of the state of Florida.
When Dusty turned babyface, the territory was on fire, and all of us became so close. We were like family.
So now the ring beginning to fill. Jerry Briscoe charges in, Don Serrano, Brian Blair, and a host of others.
As this younger generation elevates the territory to a whole new level, Eddie, now in his 50s, decides to quit the ring for good, just as his pursuits outside of the business begin to bring him trouble.
There were a lot of things going on in Eddie's life. He was torn between two women. He was in business with some shady characters. I could tell that Eddie was drinking too much. He was maybe taking too much medication. He had a lot of struggles in his life, personally.
When he came back in the plane at nighttime, there was a store that was open, and he could get a cheap bottle of wine there. Every time he was driving, he would chug-a-lug that wine down, and he would take the bottle and he'd throw it out of the car into the grass. And he came home one night and the place wasn't open, and he was so desperate. He went out into the field there and he groveled around in the dirt and found all these bottles, and he sat there in the field and drank the dregs out of those bottles. By this time, alcohol had taken over. He couldn't stop.
Consumed by his alcoholism and burdened with personal and professional troubles, Eddie Graham struggles to find meaning beyond the ring.
Over time, people forget who you are, right? My grandmother told a story about how they had gone to a restaurant and they didn't know who he was. He wasn't in the spotlight anymore, but I remember my grandmother being like how he was just not himself after that encounter.
When that career is over, who are you? Who's looking back in the mirror?
One of the last checks my grandfather wrote was to a liquor store for $8. And in the memo, it said peace of mind. I think if anyone's had time of their life and they just can't find comfort within themselves and they feel like everything's out of control, you just don't have that peace of mind, and he couldn't find it. He turned 55, and I had gone over to my grandparents' house, and I was roller skating, and so I was like skating around him in circles, and I'm like, so what'd you get for your birthday? He's like, 55. And I was like, 55 what? He said 55 years. Looking back, I realized he was telling me that he was done. That he got 55 years is what he had.
I was at the Super Bowl. The Miami Dolphins were playing the San Francisco 49ers. They paged me, Mike Graham, please come to the box office. I walked into the box office and said, hey, my name's Mike Graham. Like, paged me. And the woman goes, oh yeah, you gotta call home. Call home. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? It's your dad. Dad? What's wrong with my dad?
His wife, Lucy, went out, is what she told my daughter. And when she came back, he had shot himself not once, but twice. That's what I heard from what the coroner said, and I will spare you the gory details about the bedroom.
He's in the hospital and he's hooked up to machines, and a family member has to say to unplug him or keep him alive. And I got back home the next morning and walked to the hospital, and there he sat back in the corner, his head all bandaged up and everything. I said, well, it was no accident. So I looked at Mom and I said, Mom, you know, got to do it. He wouldn't want to be here like this. So we went out. I said, okay, bullet. And he lived about 5 minutes.
It was shocking. I mean, everybody was in a state of shock.
It is with a deep sense of regret that I announce to you at this time the untimely death of a friend, a colleague, and a leader, Eddie Graham.
I immediately started crying. I couldn't believe it. I mean, why? Why, Eddie? Why would you do that to your son, to your grandchildren?
We were young, but my brother was like If he loved us so much, how could he do this? My brother was very attached to my grandfather. Yeah, very attached.
I think that people knew he was depressed, but they never thought Eddie would go that far. He was keeping that to himself.
I think he bottled a lot of it up because he didn't want people to know he wasn't as strong as his outside persona was. He realized that if he let people know he was weak, that there were people that would love to have just walked in and taken over. And I think he was probably fighting for the territory, too.
We hear the news. Eddie Graham's dead. And holy shit, what's going to happen to Florida? We found out within a year, Florida was on its last legs. Vince McMahon was starting the national expansion in 1984, and the territories were going out of business because Vince was trying to suck up all the talent.
When WWE started robbing the territories, Eddie saw the writing on the wall probably much earlier than most of the people did.
A year before Eddie passed away, the territory started struggling?
Yeah, big time.
Tell me about that.
Well, Dusty left. Took the whole crew with him.
Dad had spent years getting Dusty over and creating Dusty Rhodes, but when Dusty left, he took half the territory with him. And that really made Dad mad. It was like he was almost trying to kill the territory for taking all the talent with him.
In 1984, Dusty Rhodes leaves Florida to work for Jim Crockett Promotions. With the wrestling industry in chaos, Mike Graham is still reeling from his father's death when he inherits the daunting task of leading the territory.
Mike picked up like a man, ran the territory, and, life went on.
Mike was obviously attempting to fill his father's shoes. It wasn't just him trying to do everything, but it wasn't the same place.
Where have you been? You've been home. Okay, shut up a second.
They even ran an angle after Eddie's death. The Freebirds were down there and they were trying to heat things up, and they thought, well, if we desecrate the memory of Florida's most popular wrestler ever, then the fans will hate us.
It's like father, like son. You're both losers.
Eddie would have wanted Mike to use his death in something that enhanced wrestling.
I'm gonna prove to you that he was more of a man than the three of you ever be. As long as you live, your are mine.
It was too far. It was too much. The fans could tell it was desperation because they could see the crowds had shrunk.
At the time, things were already shifting. I guess cable TV was starting to come out, and my dad was just trying to keep it afloat. And no matter what he did, it wasn't going to quite stay afloat.
Struggling under the weight of Eddie's absence, the once great territory lasts just 2 more years before closing its doors.
Eddie would have been the only one to be able to save it because of all of the NWA promoters of every other territory in the country. The one guy that had the best relationship with Vince McMahon Sr. and would have had one with Vince Jr. was Eddie Graham, and he was gone.
Mike and I were at a bar having a couple beers and just talking about his dad, and all of a sudden he broke down. I could tell that his dad not being there weighed heavy on Mike every single day.
Already grieving the death of his father and the loss of their family's wrestling empire, Mike Graham is soon to face another devastating tragedy. Following his father's death and the collapse of their company, Mike Graham must now forge a new path outside the promotion that has defined his life's work.
This should be an interesting matchup. Mike Graham and Diamond Dallas Page to take on Bill Kazmaier and Jushin Thunder Liger.
By that point, Mike was closing in on 40. He got a position with WCW, and he was trying to help mentor some of the younger guys. Obviously, people who knew Mike and knew Eddie respected him, and etc. But I think, unfortunately, he never made his mark in WCW as anybody with a lot of pull because he was just one of the soldiers at that point.
Oh, right in the face!
I think that when it shifted and it was more theatrics. It was being written by people that had no idea about wrestling. He got a little bit bitter because he was old school. My dad was definitely not a corporate guy.
Mike never reached the pinnacle of Eddie's dreams, but he still had a very successful wrestling career, and he was a good businessman.
He had a great lifestyle, lived on the water, had a multitude of boats, and he won a bunch of offshore races.
My brother loved racing boats, and so my dad and brother actually got the chance to race a couple times. My dad never wanted to sit still. He would always be like, yeah, you sleep when you die. He got his first tattoo when he was 40, and it was like a skull with like fire coming out of the head and a lightning bolt going through it. And then underneath it, it said peace of mind. So my dad would always talk to my brother and I about it. Peace of mind. Like, if you don't have it, you have nothing.
But like his father before him, Mike's search for inner peace often ends at the bottom of a bottle.
He had 2 driver's licenses, actually. One legally under Mike Gossett and one under Mike Graham. So Mike Gossett got 1 DUI, then Mike Graham got 1. And then his drinking got so much worse. After my grandfather passed away, he was miserable, and he changed. Normally, you know, my dad was not like that. He never showed that side to my brother and I. It was always just upbeat. More tough to like my brother, I think, because he wanted him to be a strong man. Stephen did have to fight and prove that he wasn't a wimp growing up, because he was from a wrestling family and he did have kind of like a stronger build. I think everyone expected him to be some tough, mean guy. I think that hurt him in the long run, but he just kind of never found his stride. We talked every day, you know, text, phone call, whatever. I sent my brother a text in the morning. He didn't respond. I just thought he was working or doing something. And then my dad called me, asking me if I'd heard from Stephen. And I was like, I'll go check on him. And so that's how we found out that he took his life. When I found my brother, I ran outside and I called my dad first. My dad was saying he'd be there. I'm like, no, don't come here, don't come here. And so once I was able to leave, I walked into the kitchen with my dad and he said, it's a good thing you found Stephen, because if I would have found him, you'd be burying both of us, because I'd have taken my life right then and there.
It just floored me. I don't know what the demons were that got him. Again, now here's his sister, poor little Nicole, just distraught. His dad, everybody distraught, It just didn't have to be.
I wasn't expecting it at all, because Stephen and I went through and saw how hard it was with my grandfather. We saw what it did to my dad. We saw how it absolutely destroyed our family. But with my grandfather doing what he did, I felt that it made it an option. It turned into something that my brother felt, he did it. Now we have my grandfather and my brother, who is my best friend, and I found my brother. So everyone was so worried about me. But I was worried about my dad.
Haunted by the death of his son Stephen in 2010, Mike Graham struggles with the pain of losing another family member to suicide.
I think every parent blames himself. He said, I must have been a shitty son and a shitty father. Pretty heavy.
Sometimes we're our own worst critics, and we're hard on ourselves about different things. And I think that, there's many things that Mike could have thought about, and it was just another one of the things just knocking on the bad side of his brain.
you know, between his dad and now my brother, he just absolutely was crushed.
Mike and I were close, but we weren't that fuzzy, good feeling close. And he called me up and said, hey, you know, I love you, right? I said, I love you too, Mike. And that was it. He hung up the phone.
My dad met my daughter and I at a park, and I was like, Dad, this ends with Stephen. I'm like, look at her. She doesn't deserve this. What your dad did was horrible. What Stephen did, we're never going to recover from it, but this ends now. Look at her. She doesn't deserve this. And he was like, you're right, Nicole. You're right, Nicole. You're right. But less than 2 years later, he did the same.
He was in Daytona Beach, bike week or something, with his wife. And from what I gather, she went outside and said she was going to go see some friends.
When she got back and opened the door, simultaneously, she heard a gunshot. And there was Mike, dead in his son Stephen's cowboy boots.
He couldn't break the cycle.
You can't see what's behind the person's eyes. They're telling you one thing, they're smiling, but they may be, you know, they may be just absolutely torn up inside. Then you realize he's gone. End of story, you know? No more. There's no more.
I mean, I was still trying to pick up the pieces after my brother. Again, it was less than 2 years apart between my brother and my dad. After the conversations I had with my dad, asking him, telling him, begging him, please, this ends with Stephen, it was just a different level of pain.
Mike had been away from wrestling for some time, and I hadn't seen him in years, but then the news comes out, and that was a shock. Even if you're not shocked at anything in wrestling, you still think, well, the same thing can't happen to two different generations. They can't do the same thing. And it happened to 3 generations. You just, how much, the same family, how much more can go on?
The pattern of suicide that haunts the Gossett family reaches far beyond Eddie, Mike, and Stephen. This heartbreaking cycle of tragedy actually spans 4 generations and 5 men.
A lot of people don't know this, but Eddie's father killed himself. And also, Eddie's brother Skip killed himself. It's a very vicious cycle when you have more than one suicide. One suicide is one too many, but when you have multiple suicides within the same family structure, it's just tragic.
My only explanation or thought, because I'm not a doctor, obviously, but is that when one happens, then it makes it viable for someone else when they're having a hard time. And also the fact that depression and addiction is hereditary. And unless you have someone step in and recognize it and get help and let them know that it's not normal what you're feeling, but it's going to be okay, that just wasn't quite happening in my family.
Big time lesson to learn, because it isn't just the people that go, it's the people that are left behind. Heavy burden for Nicole to carry and heavy burden for her daughter.
We are at the old armory, which is now the Brian Glazier Jewish Community Center. And Larry Simon, who was Boris Malenko, who my grandfather had huge feuds with, his son helped put this together in a way to commemorate all the wrestlers that came here every Tuesday for many, many years. So it's pretty great to see, actually. This is my dad and my grandfather.
Mike and Eddie Graham have won the Florida Tag Team Championship.
Nothing could keep the fans away. This was the home of the Titans of Tampa, and this will always be the house that Championship Wrestling from Florida built.
I think wrestling fans should know that they absolutely respected the fans. And I hope that the fans that met them felt that. There was so much good, so much laughter, a lot of good times, and those are the things that I focus on more than anything else because they were really exceptional people. I remember Eddie, my papa, as bare-chested with a cast net off the dock catching mullet for us. A lot of love. A lot of love. My brother, my bestie, my best friend, I just wish he knew how everyone loved him and wanted to be there for him. Dad. We had that tough relationship because I called him out on things. But there was so much love and respect. I miss my dad so much. I wish he was here to see my daughter grow up because he's missing out on a lot, but that I miss him.
Some of the best times of my life were with the Grahams, and with all the people that the Grahams brought in, there is a plethora of good times. A plethora of good times.
They're friends of mine. Enjoyed my time with them. Wish we could have had a lot more days.
The thing to do is not dwell on the bad, dwell on the good. That's what gets me through. Nicole, love her, love her. She's the legacy of that family.
And my grandfather being silly with me always.
And it took me a while to get to a place where I felt like I could finally offer some type of assistance. And so I found the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay, and they offer amazing services. And I feel that I've come to a point in my recovery and healing that I can hopefully get a word out there that may strike a chord with someone to make them call for help, or survivors that are struggling to get out of bed because they've lost family members to know that they should live their lives to honor those that they have lost.
There has to be a lesson to everybody that's watching this program that if you feel suicidal, there's help right around the corner. And I don't care who you are, somebody loves you, always.
You have to just make that step by reaching out to someone just to say, something's not right. I'm having these thoughts. Just speak up is what I'd ask. You can have fame, family, money, but if you don't have that peace of mind, you have nothing. My grandfather and my dad clearly didn't have it, and my brother didn't have it, but it occurred to me less than a year ago that I have it. And I had been wanting to get a tattoo. I'm not a tattoo person. And all I wanted was my handwriting that says peace of mind and a semicolon, which represents mental health, suicide awareness. Very simple. And it's just an amazing reminder of where I've gotten with my life and how I feel and peace. I have so much to be grateful for, and I'm going to live my best life because that's the best way I can honor them. I am so happy right now. Things are great. My daughter's thriving, amazing friends, family. I'm really happy, actually. Does it show?
For Wanda Metcalf, a woman whose entire adult life had revolved around the principle of caregiving. This unfolding crime struck with devastating precision and deeply personal anguish. Blood pressure, that type things, which led to her having to go to dialysis. A routine procedure overseen by ostensibly trusted medical professionals. This was not merely an obligation but an act of profound connection, a shared experience that strengthened their bond. Underscored the implicit trust the Metcalf family, and indeed countless other families, placed in the medical system. Profound professional identity and extensive experience, she stated, her words resonating with an undeniable sincerity and genuine compassion. This inherent empathy, this profound humanistic drive, had been the unwavering compass guiding her professional path for decades, shaping her understanding of human vulnerability and the sacred responsibility of a caregiver. The weight of her extensive professional experience, lending gravitas to her observations, nuanced understanding of patient care, medical protocols, and physiological responses, professionally informed judgment of a highly experienced medical practitioner. From her vantage point as a seasoned nurse, she possessed a deep, practical, and they actually pull your blood out, and they clean it, and then they put it back in. This description, clear and concisely articulated for a lay audience, vividly highlighted the invasive yet absolutely essential nature of the procedure, artificially purified of toxins and waste products, and then carefully returned to the patient's body. During this critical and extended process, the patient is rendered utterly vulnerable. Crucially, the vigilant, ethical, and compassionate care of the attending medical staff, emphasizing the extended duration of this intimate, critical intervention. These hours spent immobile, connected to the machines. Yet, this prolonged duration, this consistent repetition several times a week, the extended length of each treatment session, compounded by the frequency, and ultimately did occur. The demanding schedule of medical treatments had, by this point, become an undeniable, ingrained rhythm. Trips to the DeVita Clinic in Lufkin, Texas, have become a regular part of her life. The predictability of these visits, the familiar faces of staff and fellow patients, the rhythmic hum of the machines, the established flow of the treatment room, all contributed to a perceived sense of routine and safety. For Fran, it was simply part of her ongoing existence. The DeVita Dialysis Center in Lufkin, a bustling and vital hub of life-sustaining care, indispensable life-sustaining treatment for a significant portion of the Lufkin area's vulnerable population, a non-negotiable anchor in their daily existence. It was, quite simply, DeVita, or facing a rapidly deteriorating prognosis. This profound dependence, this complete reliance on the institution and its professional staff, painted a chilling and tragic backdrop to the unfolding events. Inexplicably transformed into a site of profound vulnerability, a place where the very act of seeking life became an encounter with death. The logistical commitment to Fran Metcalf's ongoing health was a profound testament to her family's immense love and unwavering dedication. Wanda recounted the steadfast support they meticulously provided, weaving the demanding schedule of medical appointments into the fabric of their daily lives. We were taking her to dialysis 3 days a week. This was a significant undertaking, requiring careful coordination, considerable time. Beyond the essential transport and logistical coordination, Wanda ensured she maintained deep personal connections, prioritizing quality time and shared moments with her mother. I could go out and visit with her on Saturdays when I was off, she explained, detailing the quiet, tender moments of shared conversation and comfort that offered a cherished reprieve from the demanding medical routine, demonstrating not only responsibility and duty, but also a deep and abiding affection. Shared experience of battling a life-threatening chronic illness. When Fran would come to dialysis, some real bonds were being made there. The clinic rapidly transcended its functional role as merely a place of medical intervention. It became a small, informal community, a vibrant network of support where shared vulnerability often led to surprisingly genuine and profound connections, and built a profound sense of mutual understanding. This camaraderie often extended beyond purely patient-to-patient connections. Even the nursing staff, the whole thing, it becomes a family, Wanda observed. This pervasive atmosphere of profound trust and communal support, twisting the very notion of a family into a perverse landscape of extreme vulnerability and the most profound betrayal. The friendships that offered such vital comfort would tragically soon. The experience of undergoing dialysis was never intended to be a simple, impersonal medical procedure. A profoundly immersive, demanding, and intensely personal journey. I think it was a real personal experience, because all of the people there receiving dialysis were really struggling to maintain. Patients faced not just the physiological demands of advanced kidney failure, profound emotional strain, and the pervasive mental toll of constant medical dependency. Fulfilling quality of life was arduous, unrelenting, and ongoing. The clinic, in this context, was far more than merely a treatment center, and the quiet heroism of enduring pain became, for many, a grim and challenging routine, not just among patients themselves, but also between patients and the dedicated for both patients and staff alike, deeply invested in the arduous work of health preservation and life extension. The dialysis process was fundamentally perceived as a routine process, with relatively few complications. Invasive medical intervention, severe, acute, and especially unexplained cardiac events, were understood to be exceedingly rare, well outside the realm of common expectation. There was a prevailing, hard-won sense of normalcy that governed the clinic. It was the unshakable foundation upon which everything else was built. However challenging, from its terrifying, emergent reality, the unseen terror had begun its insidious work, casting its first long, dark shadow over the DeVita Dialysis Center. Unfolding horror and malaise. Fran was having a fairly normal treatment day that day, and the dialysis process appeared to be proceeding precisely as anticipated, a predictable hum of normalcy, thereby creating a false sense of security that made the ensuing events all the more jarring. The clinic buzzed with its usual activity, the rhythmic filtration of blood filling the air with a soft, steady, almost soothing hum. And indeed the clinic's future was about to take. Then, with an abruptness that defied all medical explanation, health ranged into a critically dangerous, life-threatening territory within moments. Immediately, they carefully calibrated dialysis machines, insistent warnings slicing through the clinic's quiet atmosphere with alarming authority. The alarms and the alerts were going off, their piercing electronic wails signaling a life-threatening medical emergency, instantly transforming the previously calm treatment space into a scene of frantic, urgent medical activity. Initiating immediate emergency protocols designed to stabilize a patient in such dire crises. The need for advanced medical intervention was immediate, undeniable, and paramount. Without hesitation, they called an ambulance. It's small enough that the ambulance is less than 2 minutes away. The rapid response time, a testament to the efficiency and proximity of local emergency services. A furious attempt to pull Fran back from the precipice of death. The severity of her condition necessitated a higher level of care. Then they moved to the hospital. A call that immediately signals grave concern and an impending tragedy. My dad had had the nurse call me from the hospital. The intermediary added another layer of urgency and weight, chosen perhaps to cushion the profound impact of the news, bypassing direct communication to convey the severity through a trusted family member. The message was terse, clinical, professionally restrained, and I need to get there fast. Barely masked the profound and life-threatening nature of her mother's sudden, catastrophic condition, implying that every passing moment was critical. Every second counted in a fight for a life that was rapidly slipping away. These coded words carried an undeniable, chilling weight of terminal prognosis, signaling a profound. She immediately dropped everything. Life and death, a struggle that made no medical sense to her trained eye. Her journey to the hospital became a blur of frantic hope and mounting, unspeakable dread. Desperate hope intermingled with a mounting, unspeakable dread. Any last tender moment, any comforting exchange that might have offered a modicum of solace. The crushing grief was immediate, overwhelming, and utterly profound. This was not a typical end to a life marked by chronic illness. From my understanding, it is very rare for someone on dialysis to go into cardiac arrest, she reflected, articulating the deeply unsettling medical incongruity of the situation with precise professional judgment. The very purpose of dialysis, as she knew intimately, was to stabilize and improve patient health. Event as cardiac arrest, for a patient to suffer such a fatal reversal precisely during the treatment itself, was an insistent, clanging alarm bell resounding within her professional psyche. The personal shock was immense. Her mother was undergoing a procedure fundamentally meant to sustain and extend life, her voice barely capturing the profound emotional disorientation of such an untimely and logically inconsistent death. This was simply not the expected, gradual progression of illness. Unwavering determination that would not be deterred. I just really want to know why this happened. It became the singular, driving force behind her relentless pursuit of answers. But to the horrifying discovery of premeditated malice, a calculated act of murder, masquerading as a medical crisis. Her demand for why was not just a lament. To fully grasp the magnitude of the tragedy of Fran Metcalf's inexplicable death. A life marked by remarkable inner strength and quiet fortitude in the face of persistent, severe adversity. Fran Metcalf was born on August 3, but one profoundly shaped and forever marked by the early onset of a devastating illness. My mother had polio at a very young age, Wanda recounted, explaining the genesis of her mother's lifelong physical challenges. This devastating viral infection. So she struggled with mobility and had to have braces on her legs. Daily reminder of her physical limitations were a constant companion, teaching her resilience from a tender age. Her mobility, a fundamental aspect of daily life, was severely restricted. The shadow of her disability, unfortunately, extended far beyond the purely physical, subtly but significantly impacting her social development and educational opportunities during her formative years. As she got older, her disability was affecting her a lot in school. The inherent demands of a traditional classroom environment, coupled with frequent, presented significant and often overwhelming hurdles, further shaping the trajectory of her young life. She spent a lot of time in the hospital, far from her home, away from the comforting familiarity of family and friends, underscored the profound emotional and social challenges of her early years. Something deeply positive that emerged directly from adversity, that showcased her capacity for love and connection. Fundamentally characterized Fran Metcalf's resilient youth, that a remarkable twist of fate profoundly unfolded, proving that even from hardship and personal vulnerability, love can blossom with unexpected beauty and unwavering strength. Unexpectedly caused her to cross paths with her future husband, Walter, particularly for complex and long-standing medical conditions like those she faced due to polio. Extensive travel for treatment was often required. There were bigger hospitals on the Gulf Coast, Wanda explained, outlining the pragmatic and unavoidable reasons for their frequent journeys. Inadvertently placed her precisely in the path of destiny, leading her to a life-altering encounter. It was during one such visit to Port Arthur, against the backdrop of a bustling Gulf Coast city with its vibrant maritime activity. They just hit it off. He was good-looking, and Mother fell head over heels in love. The swiftness and profound depth of their mutual affection were clear and undeniable, necessarily dictated the accelerated pace of their courtship and their love story was a whirlwind of profound connection, deep mutual attraction, and practical necessity. A testament to a bond strong enough to bypass typical social timelines and accelerate the pace of romance, built on mutual admiration and an ardent desire for a shared future, providing Fran with a true silver lining to her enduring health struggles. Anchored by a deep and abiding affection, successfully built a loving, bustling home, a powerful testament to their enduring partnership and unwavering commitment to one another. Together, they proudly raised 4 children, and their lives unfolded with the familiar, universal joys and challenges of family life, firmly anchored by their deep commitment to one another and to the nurturing of their burgeoning family. One of their children, their thoughtful and compassionate daughter Wanda. Intimate journey through the complex world of health challenges. Wanda went on to become a nurse, dedicating her entire professional life, perhaps unconsciously fulfilling a vocational dream her mother herself could not physically pursue. Wanda, with a reflective, tender empathy, often mused upon the undeniable. I think that mother would have loved to have been a nurse, and a powerful nurturing instinct that permeated her very being. The stark physical realities of her mother's long-standing polio, and its subsequent, but she had some vision problems. Again, the mobility problems, Wanda clarified, acknowledging the practical and debilitating limitations that regretfully closed off that esteemed career path for Fran. Meticulously instilled a profound sense of care, duty. This was not just a momentous occasion for Wanda, but a deeply shared triumph for both mother and daughter. Celebrating achievement despite the educational hurdles Fran herself had once faced. And in a more mundane, yet equally profound, she was there to bring me a cup of coffee at night when I was studying just to make sure that I had everything that I needed. Her energy and capacity for involvement, remarkably sustained despite her lifelong physical challenges. An indispensable figure in the family's active social and celebratory life, celebrating their every milestone and reveling wholeheartedly in their youthful exuberance. Her voice a familiar and beloved sound in the bleachers, always offering encouragement, applause, and unwavering support. She was a very loving person, drawing immense energy and boundless joy from the simple, yet profound, act of communal gathering, listening attentively to the tales and experiences of others. Presence. Her life, even with its inherent challenges, was a powerful testament to the enduring strength and beauty of human connection. Her intensified reliance on advanced medical interventions that lay just ahead brought with it its own complex management requirements and a formidable host of potential long-term complications, as is often the tragic case with diabetes, to a critical deterioration of her renal function. The medical necessity became undeniable, profound, and urgent. She was prescribed dialysis treatments, inexorably tethering her very survival to the intricate and continuous processes of artificial blood filtration. It quickly evolved into a vital, recurring fixture in her weekly routine, profoundly transforming her daily rhythm and the logistics of her existence. Crucially, it was a place where she, with her inherent warmth and sociable nature, found another kind of family. This new, unique community, born of shared adversity, quickly became an indispensable source of solace. A specific point marking the beginning of this challenging yet, in its way, community-building new chapter. She made many friends, Wanda observed. The unique and highly structured environment of a dialysis clinic, transforming what could be an isolating medical ordeal into an unexpectedly vibrant social experience. This camaraderie often extended beyond purely patient-to-patient connections. Even the nursing staff, the whole thing, it becomes a family, Wanda aptly observed. The intertwined lives within that microcosm of the clinic. This pervasive atmosphere of profound trust, community, and mutual reliance, however, would tragically serve as a devastating psychological contrast to the insidious horror that would soon engulf the clinic. Vulnerability and the most profound betrayal imaginable. The unspoken covenant of care, meticulously woven into this close-knit social fabric, suddenly and inexplicably culminated in unspeakable tragedy, abruptly and cruelly severing her cherished connections to a beloved family and her vibrant community. But from a profound and bewildering struggle to comprehend how it could have happened. This was not the expected, gradual decline often associated with chronic, debilitating illness, occurring precisely when she should have been most physiologically stable and medically supported. It defied all expectations, and every medical precedent they knew. For Wanda Metcalf, the circumstances surrounding her mother's death were deeply anomalous, even professionally perplexing to the core. You don't expect, typically, the point where the clinical facts simply did not align with the tragic reality. Wanda explained, detailing the fundamental therapeutic goal of the complex procedure. It was fundamentally designed to alleviate the immense strain on the cardiovascular system by diligently removing harmful toxins, thereby reducing the risk of cardiac events, not provoking them. In every professional estimation and statistical analysis, clanging alarm bell resounding. The emotional impact on Wanda was immense, agonizing, and went far beyond the professional contradiction alone. And completely unjust nature of her mother's death had brutally stolen away a cherished, fundamental opportunity. I think that one of the hardest things for me was not to be able to have a goodbye moment with my mom. Was a profoundly agonizing aspect of her grief, leaving an open wound of unsaid words, lingering affections, and unresolved emotions that would haunt her for years to come. The collective bewilderment and shock of the family ignited an unwavering determination to meticulously unravel the mystery, to seek answers that transcended the bland, driving her forward to unearth a terrible truth hidden within the clinic's walls. An atmosphere thick with unspoken sorrow and the fresh agony of loss. Wanda Metcalf approached her mother's bedside. So I reached down and I kissed her on the cheek. It was a daughter's last touch. But what immediately followed this tender moment was a violent, shocking assault on her senses. When I did, there was a horrible smell that burned my eyes and my nostrils. It was powerfully acrid, intensely pungent, and unequivocally corrosive, causing an immediate, involuntary, and violent physical recoil. Her eyes stung with a searing, chemical irritation. The very air around her mother's deceased form seemed tainted, toxic, profoundly out of place. She smelled like bleach, particularly upon a person recently undergoing dialysis. Struck Wanda with the undeniable force of a professional alarm bell. Bleach, a cleaning agent, a substance of external sanitation. Its pervasive presence, stark, potent, and unmistakable, and deeply unnatural contact with a corrosive substance. This single, horrific detail immediately transcended the realm of personal grief and devastating sorrow and entered the stark. This potent smell was the first tangible, damning clue, the undeniable, It was the precise moment where profound personal sorrow fundamentally transformed into an unyielding. The professional certainty, the forensic linkage, was yet to come. However, the profound incongruity of that acrid scent ignited within them an unwavering and collective determination to push beyond the vague explanations that satisfied no one. This wasn't merely a grieving family. Community-wide calamity that stunned Lufkin to its core. For, as the grim, unsettling details of that day began to slowly unfold, a chilling, almost impossible coincidence emerged. A pattern so stark it defied every statistical expectation of medical probability and randomness. Unfortunately, Fran wasn't the only death at the clinic that day. A second life, taken under similarly inexplicable, emergent pattern of fatality that could not be ignored. Resilient fabric of the Lufkin community, representing another cherished pillar of local life. Claire Strange was a grandmother, a deeply cherished and respected figure in her family, much like Fran. She was born during the tumultuous era of the Great Depression, and an unshakable approach to life's numerous challenges. A testament to a deep dedication, unwavering strength, and enduring work ethic, contributing tirelessly to the agricultural backbone of the region. She was an integral part of the tight-knit community. This extensive experience made her accustomed to the treatment routine. Unexpected demise all the more alarming and unsettling. Claire Strange was, in every sense, profoundly unsettling and deeply suspicious. At the time of April 1, when she went to visit the dialysis facility, she was screened as normal. Her vital signs were stable, her health assessment offered no immediate red flags, and the overall prognosis for her treatment day was entirely positive and without complication. Based on her consistent medical history and the expected efficacy of the established dialysis procedure, an uneventful dialysis process would have been confidently anticipated by both her and the staff. Yet, with a horrifying, almost symmetrical, in an abrupt, unexpected, and shocking sequence of events, the initial quiet shock quickly transmuted into a chilling epiphany. Emergent pattern of fatalities, a macabre echo that resonated with sinister implications. That was a lady that was real sweet to her. These two women, beyond any conceivable realm of medical chance, they both went into cardiac arrest within 30 minutes of each other. To have two patients die on the same day, especially under such specific and sudden circumstances. Hard statistic driving the intellectual shift from medical anomaly to calculated criminality. This was no longer a matter for epidemiology or statistical probability alone. The collective understanding among both medical staff and law, or what technical error could. The investigative focus had pivoted sharply, with chilling implication. A terrifying relentlessness that defied all attempts by the clinic and local authorities to identify and stop them. The efficiency. A precise mechanism of harm that left little to no chance for survival or recovery. It was a killing machine, but not a mechanical one. And then, amid the mounting terror and the frantic, delivered by the courage of observant patients themselves, benign act of clinic maintenance was now recalled by terrified witnesses with a stark, terrifying clarity that transformed it into crucial, incriminating evidence. Room suddenly stood out as a beacon of profound a clear visual anomaly amidst the mundane routines of patient care. This was not the expected action of a doctor administering life-saving medicine. Premeditated act witnessed by the very vulnerable individuals whose lives were being threatened. The seemingly routine object, a cleaning bucket filled with bleach, became, in that moment, a reservoir of potential poison. The common medical instrument, a syringe, a symbol of healing, became a weapon. The very air within the sterile, hushed confines of the DeVita Dialysis Center in Lufkin, Texas, by the spring of 2008, begun to warp into a disquieting thrum of fear and uncertainty, even within the most critical sectors of its public institutions, yet persistently gripped one of its vital healthcare facilities. This was a clinic dedicated to the intricate, a sanctuary where patients entrusted their very lives to trained professionals and sophisticated machinery. Yet, within these very walls, an insidious deviation from the norm had begun to unfurl its grotesque banner. Worry tones between bewildered colleagues and anxious family members soon transcended rumor to become an undeniable, terrifying reality. Irrevocably shattered any illusion of mere unfortunate medical coincidence. Far more malevolent, and fundamentally human design. The dedicated staff, individuals who had consciously chosen a profession rooted in compassionate care, found their professional composure slowly, relentlessly, fraying. Employees of the facility were on edge, their smiles now hesitant. The weight of unanswered questions, the gnawing anxiety that clung to every interaction, pressed down on them relentlessly. Was a critical piece of protocol being missed? Was a virulent pathogen, perhaps a novel strain resistant to all disinfectants? Or a far more chilling and unsettling possibility, flaw in their supposedly life-saving machinery, transforming it into an unwitting instrument of death, a terrifying paradox of care? The questions were endless, relentlessly plaguing their minds. Predictable rhythm of their work into a crucible of profound dread. The implicit safety of their profession and the inherent security of their institution. Unspoken, understanding that permeated the rows of treatment chairs. A chilling current that flowed almost telepathically between those who gave care and those who received it. Were acutely aware that something was amiss, something was profoundly, terribly wrong. Accustomed to detecting the most subtle nuances of their own fragile physiological states. Urgent conversations among doctors and administrators held just out of earshot in the corridors. A subtle yet pervasive current of fear and uncertainty that now permeated the very air they breathed. Deeply uncertain space, a terrifying lottery of life and death, and they were left to play its horrifying draw. And quite literally, chemically dissolved, leaving behind a bitter, lingering residue of fear. Confidence, an operational order within the beleaguered clinic. A series of rigorous internal audits had been immediately commissioned. From the mundane routines of linen management to the intricate mechanics of the dialysis machines themselves. Extra nurses were brought in, their presence adding another layer of visual oversight, hoping to detect any anomaly. Monitoring protocols were tightened to unprecedented levels. Was placed under an unforgiving magnifying glass, desperately searching for the elusive source of the recurring deaths. It was a comprehensive, almost frantic, effort to staunch the flow of precious lives being so inexplicably extinguished. Yet, with a chilling defiance of all logical intervention, and every desperate, even under the changes in policy procedure, the deaths still continued, resistant to heightened surveillance, and mocking all administrative safeguards, began to whisper of a darkness far deeper than mere negligence, accidental contamination, or an elusive technical malfunction. The baffling, continued sequence of fatalities, now explicitly venturing beyond the standard scope of internal medical review and squarely into the far more, ultimately reveals evidence of an intentional crime. The word crime, stark and heavy with menace, irrevocably replaced the clinical lexicon of complication or incident. This was human-engineered evil, cold, premeditated, and utterly horrifying in its calculated precision. Steely determination to uncover the source of such depravity and bring it to justice. Testimony of family members who had gone to Fran Metcalf's bedside to bid their loved ones farewell. An unmistakable chemical signature of violent, unnatural intervention. There was a horrible smell that burned my eyes and my nostrils like bleach. The acrid, biting scent, so profoundly incongruous with the usual. The subtle temps of sterile linen, the background scent of illness, brutally assaulted the senses with its chemical savagery. It was a smell intrinsically designed for aggressive purification, to linger intimately on the skin of a dying or deceased loved one. Raw, intensely stinging, and unequivocally cold. Her nostrils had flared with a sharp, painful sensation, as if she had just inhaled a potent, corrosive irritant directly into her delicate nasal passages. The very air around her mother's deceased form seemed tainted, polluted, profoundly toxic, fundamentally out of place. This specific, powerful, and overwhelmingly persistent odor, so profoundly out of place on a human body in any medical setting, struck Wanda with the undeniable force of a blaring, internal, professional alarm bell. Bleach, a ubiquitous cleaning agent, a substance of external sanitation and hygienic eradication, had absolutely no legitimate or innocuous reason to be intimately associated with her mother's final repose. Directly contradicted to every expectation of a natural death or even a purely unforeseen medical complication. And undeniably caustic, powerfully signifying direct, proximate. For Wanda, and profoundly disturbing domain of undeniable forensic evidence. irrevocably shifting the understanding of Fran Metcalf's death from an unexplained heart attack. The seemingly innocuous, tender act of a final, loving kiss had, leaving an indelible stain on the Metcalf family's grief and forever altering their perception of trust and vulnerability. The Lufkin Clinic, designed as a beacon of life, was slowly, chillingly, being unmasked as a deliberate theater of death. The revelation of an intentional crime, irrevocably solidified by the horrifying, galvanized the Lufkin Police Department into an immediate and massive forensic undertaking. For a police force in a relatively small Texas town, accustomed primarily to conventional local law enforcement matters, this complex and multifaceted criminal investigation was unprecedented in its scope and methodological demands, calling for resources and precision typically associated with far larger metropolitan areas and the expertise of national agencies. This was a comprehensive, meticulous, requiring an exhaustive forensic approach that effectively transformed the entire clinic, from its dialysis chairs to its shops containers, into an intricate, sprawling, and disturbing crime scene. In an operation of immense logistical complexity and requiring time, each translucent plastic tube, each small, precisely engineered plunger, all in an effort to preserve any minuscule trace evidence that might still cling to their surfaces or linger within their chambers. This immense, labor-intensive undertaking, life-saving medical implements had, in a twisted, diabolical act of malice, the sheer number of potential clues, each holding a fraction of the story, and scientifically sound method to filter the innocuous from the to efficiently identify which syringes carried the indelible, acidic signature of the killer, or adhering to their quickly and unmistakably indicated the presence of a strong basic solution, the unequivocal chemical signature of bleach. This scientific confirmation, swift, stark, and irrefutable, forensic evidence of deliberate chemical poisoning. It provided a shocking, unambiguous answer to the agonizing question of what insidious agent was causing the catastrophic, serial deaths. The invisible enemy, cloaked in the deceptive anonymity of medical routine, diabolical intent for a murderous agenda. The implications of this discovery, painting a truly visceral and agonizing picture of the victim's horrific final moments. Bleach, a powerful, caustic household chemical utterly unfit for intravenous introduction into any human being. Medically compromised individuals would have initiated an immediate, catastrophic, and violently destructive reaction at a cellular level, assaulting the very essence of life itself. Her extensive professional medical knowledge and deeply ingrained physiological understanding tragically converged with her immense filial love. Agonizing nature of the pain her mother must have experienced. An empathetic projection born. What it probably felt like to my mom was being burned from the inside out, Wanda stated, her voice strained, barely containing the immense psychological weight of such a vivid, agonizing conjecture. It was, in its starkest interpretation, a deeply empathetic substance ripping violently through delicate biological systems, attacking the very cells that composed, sustained, and gave life to the body. The internal membranes, the fragile cellular structures of red blood cells, the endothelial lining of veins and arteries, the intricate network of microcapillaries, all would have been brutally assaulted. This assault would inflict an agonizing, fiery destruction that remained tragically hidden from external view, rendered all the more heinous by its premeditated nature and its execution within a sacred, trusted setting of profound medical care and human vulnerability. The irrefutable scientific confirmation of bleach in the brought this horrifying conjecture terrifyingly close to objective truth, transforming a daughter's anguished intuition into an undeniable, terrifying, and profoundly agonizing reality. The silence of the clinic had, in fact, been punctuated by internal screams, unheard by most, but intuitively felt by those who understood both the science and the heart of what had been tragically stolen. The medical institution had become a cruel inversion of its purpose, a stage 4 invisible, calculated torment, but rather from the cold, calculated, and repeated actions of a human predator. This was not merely a problem to be solved, but a societal wound that needed profound healing. And when the killer is unmasked, when the face behind the horror is finally revealed, shattering the very bedrock of communal trust and challenging every preconceived notion of safety, decency, and security, especially within its public institutions, and, most sacredly, its healthcare facilities. The idea that such deliberate, cold-blooded malice, such calculated cruelty, was a profound affront to its collective identity, a deep and indelible stain upon its very soul. The shock was not merely academic or distant, a tragedy viewed through the lens of media. The innocence of the town, in a very real and tangible way, had been brutally assaulted. Questions, raw and anguished, erupted from every corner of the community. To make sense of a nightmare scenario that defied all logic and conventional human expectation, citizens wrestled with a horrific reality that fundamentally contradicted what was going on there, straining to force some semblance of understanding or rational explanation from a profoundly irrational series of events. What was happening to these patients? Life-threatening chronic conditions that demanded continuous, intricate medical intervention, magnified to horror exponentially, had, in a twisted, perverse inversion, become an insidious, fatal trap, laid by an individual whose professional duty was their very protection. The very act of seeking life had, for these unfortunate souls, transformed into an encounter with death, striking with an almost spiritual force at the very heart of their innocent perception of their beloved hometown. It was a question born of profound incredulity, of a fundamental rejection of what had transpired. Why in little old Lufkin can there be a serial killer? Tranquil Town was a direct, undeniable challenge to their collective identity. The concept was as foreign as it was terrifying, an anathema to their self. The pervasive fear was palpable, a cold, insidious shadow creeping into the daily lives of citizens, subtly but significantly altering their perception of even the most routine interactions and familiar faces. People looked at their neighbors, their local institutions, their trusted professionals, the very individuals upon whom a community builds its foundation of shared purpose and collective well-being, with a newly minted suspicion, agonizing uncertainty. Even the simple act of visiting a local doctor or taking an elderly relative to a clinic, unsettling feeling that the world they thought they knew. It was a primal fear, born not of an external threat, like a natural disaster, or an invading force that one could confront or escape, but of the far more insidious discovery that evil could wear a disarming smile, meticulously undermining every foundation of safety and mutual reliance. A scar that would undoubtedly take generations to truly heal. It was a deeply intimate terror, infiltrating the most trusted spaces of daily life, where trust had been irrevocably violated by a perpetrator cloaked in the deceptive mantle of healing. The question resonated not only through the stunned Lufkin community, but echoed through the broader, cloaked in the killer's impenetrable silence. But it also grappled with the very nature of human cruelty, particularly when directed towards those already in the fragile, vulnerable twilight of their health. The act was a fundamental assault on human decency, an unforgivable breach of the most sacred trust imaginable, a profound violation of the Hippocratic Oath itself. They're a crucial part of their survival, a vital, non-negotiable, and absolutely life-sustaining lifeline. This demanding and often arduous medical necessity enables individuals with failing kidneys to continue living, providing them with essential months, and often years, of precious life, targeting individuals whose lives already hung by the most tenuous of threads. The victims, by medical definition, were utterly vulnerable, completely dependent on the very system that had. They were, in essence, hostages to their own bodies, and the medical infrastructure that provided their only chance at continued life. The depth of the crime was proportional to the height of the trust betrayed. For Wanda Metcalf, a woman whose entire adult life, spanning over 3 decades, had revolved around the deeply held principle of care, this unfolding crime struck with devastating precision and deeply personal anguish, ripping at the very fabric of her professional and personal ethos. My mother had issues off and on the whole time we were growing up with diabetes, were a testament to her inherent resilience and her family's steadfast dedication. The transition to regular dialysis, while undeniably a significant and demanding life change, but rather as a necessary and established step in actively maintaining her health. This was not merely an obligation or a duty, but an act of profound connection, reassuring ritual forged in the rhythms of medical visits and mutual reliance, leaving an indelible scar on their lives and irrevocably altering their understanding of human malice. Of meticulously upholding the sacred tenets of the Hippocratic Oath had been the unwavering moral compass guiding her entire professional path for over 3 decades. shaping her understanding of human vulnerability and underscoring the sacred, life and death responsibility inextricably linked to the role of a caregiver. And I've been a nurse for over 33 years. She affirmed the profound weight of her extensive professional experience in demanding medical environments lending. This more than 3 decades in the complex and often emotionally draining field of nursing had not only granted her an intimate, of meticulously followed medical protocols, of intricate physiological responses to treatment and illness, but it had also, crucially, her initial shock, a deep-seated professional unease, and her escalating suspicion regarding the sudden catastrophe. They were the seasoned, statistically improbable deviations from expected medical outcomes. This blend of profound personal loss and professional acumen would prove to be a powerful, and the one that would tragically become the scene of a murder. It meticulously explained the delicate balance of cutting-edge technology and human physiology, and then carefully, precisely, returned to the patient's circulatory system, their vital fluids circulating outside their physical form, completely dependent on the precise, unwavering function of the technology and almost ritualistic duration of this intimate, critical intervention, while essential for patient survival, also tragically provided an extended. The predictability and regularity of these prolonged treatment sessions, compounded by their sheer frequency, proved to be a key operational factor that the emerging criminal investigation would have to meticulously consider, tragically highlighting both the ample opportunity for such nefarious acts to be carried out covertly, turning a life-sustaining routine into a calculated period of extreme vulnerability. The profound dependency created by the treatment was a woman whose life had been characterized by a quiet, unwavering resilience, a profound sense of purpose, become an undeniable, ingrained rhythm, a part of her very existence. Trips to the DeVita Clinic in Lufkin, Texas, had unequivocally become a regular part of her life. These were not merely casual errands or inconvenient appointments that could be rescheduled at whim. They were essential pilgrimages, 3 days a week, a steadfast, her deep desire to remain connected to her family and community, the rhythmic hum of the sophisticated machinery that was literally keeping her alive, the established consistent flow of the treatment room, a comfortable and almost comforting pattern born of dire medical necessity. For Fran, it was simply an enduring and essential part of her ongoing existence. Was far more than just another building housing medical equipment, or merely a collection of clinicians. It stood as a bustling and vital hub of life-sustaining care. Indeed, it was one of 2 large dialysis centers that take care of patients who've got kidney failure, underscoring its absolutely critical near-monopoly role in providing this specific, indispensable life-sustaining treatment for a significant portion of the Lufkin area's vulnerable population. The clinic represented their only viable option for continued survival, a non-negotiable anchor in their daily existence. There were no other convenient, local alternatives offering such highly specialized, continuous care in the immediate vicinity of DeVita, or facing a rapidly deteriorating prognosis and a swift, agonizing end. This profound dependency, this complete and utter reliance on the institution and its ostensibly ethical, professional staff, painted a chilling and tragic backdrop to the unfolding events that would soon plunge the town into terror. What was fundamentally supposed to be a place of healing, a sanctuary of reliable, inexplicably transformed into a site of profound, insidious vulnerability, subtly concealing a terror that would shake the very foundations of trust in the small Texas town. A place where the very act of seeking life became an encounter with a meticulously planned death. Wanda meticulously recounted the steadfast support they lovingly and diligently provided, seamlessly weaving the demanding schedule of regular. We were taking her to dialysis 3 days a week, she stated, highlighting the sheer logistical scale of this ongoing undertaking, requiring careful coordination, considerable chunks of precious time from various family members, beyond the essential transport and logistical coordination, offered a cherished reprieve from the demanding and often isolating medical routine. I could go out and visit with her on Saturdays when I was off, and comforting presence that provided invaluable emotional sustenance to both mother and daughter. These visits were precious, a testament to the enduring strength and resilience of their familial bonds, abiding affection that transcended the burdens of illness, an often emotionally taxing environment of the dialysis clinic. An unexpected facet of deep human connection profoundly blossomed and even thrived, naturally fostered a unique camaraderie and a profound, palpable sense of community among the patients themselves. When Fran would come to dialysis, some real bonds were being made there. For Fran, with her inherent warmth, her innate sociability, and her deeply loving and communicative personality, the clinic rapidly transcended its purely functional role as merely a sterile place of medical intervention. Empathetic network of vital support, where shared vulnerability often led to surprisingly genuine, often engaged in quiet, intimate conversations, and collectively built a profound sense of mutual understanding and shared resilience. Frequently extended beyond purely patient-to-patient connections, it quite often encompassed the entire clinic environment, including the dedicated caregivers themselves, even the nursing staff. The whole thing, it becomes a family, Wanda aptly observed, her words capturing the deep emotional investment made by both the vulnerable cared for and the dedicated caregivers. Codependent lives within that close-knit microcosm of the clinic, an almost grotesque counterpoint to the insidious horror that would soon engulf the clinic, transforming a presumed safe haven into a terrifying, inescapable landscape of extreme vulnerability, profoundly setting the stage for the most unimaginable and deeply personal betrayal. The friendships that offered such vital comfort and emotional solace, forged in the crucible of shared medical challenge, turning what was once a bastion of support and safety into an insidious, terrifying, and inescapable trap where the bonds of care were weaponized for lethal intent. So aptly observed, a profoundly immersive, demanding, and intensely personal journey. It was a rigorous commitment, not a casual elective. I think it was a real personal experience, because all of the people there receiving dialysis were really struggling to maintain. Patients faced not just the immense physiological demands and relentless progression of advanced kidney failure, and the rigorous discipline of a medically restrictive lifestyle, and the pervasive mental toll of constant medical dependency, an inescapable reminder of their fragile mortality. Each stretch-for a treatment session an absolute, non-negotiable necessity for their continued survival. And the arduous fight to preserve even a semblance of a normal, fulfilling quality of life was grueling, unrelenting, and ongoing. Invisible struggle for survival, a sacred space where vulnerability was implicitly shared. This profound, shared intimacy naturally fostered a deep sense of empathy, but also between these vulnerable patients and the dedicated, and often emotionally taxing care, an interwoven community of caregivers and patients bound by shared purpose and vulnerability. For both patients and staff alike, deeply invested in the arduous and vital work of health, preservation, and life extension, and professionally managed as a routine procedure with relatively few complications, while inherent medical risks, encompassing a spectrum from minor to potentially severe, and well outside the realm of common professional expectation for a patient actively undergoing dialysis treatment. There was a prevailing, hard-won sense of normalcy, of predictable patterns, and of consistent, a profound reliance on the predictable physiological responses to treatment and the smooth, professional flow of patient care. This shared understanding of expected outcomes, this hardened professional confidence in established medical procedures. It was the unshakable foundation upon which everything else was built, providing psychological comfort and professional certainty. However, on April 1, 2008, that isn't the case. Piercing intuition and burgeoning professional suspicion served as a stark, chilling, however challenging, from its terrifying, emergent, and deeply criminal reality, had begun its insidious work, casting its first long, dark shadow over the DeVita Dialysis Center, irrevocably changing its character from a presumed haven of healing and trusted care to an profoundly vulnerable and rapidly escalating site of profound, unfolding horror and human malevolence, leaving a deep and indelible scar on the collective psyche of the small Texas community. The morning of April 1, 2008, began with all the familiar, reassuring indicators of a routine medical session, promising another day of life, sustained, another quiet triumph over chronic illness. The complex dialysis process, which cleansed her blood. There were no discernible forewarnings, no subtle symptoms, horrifying and utterly incomprehensible to all who witnessed them. The clinic buzzed with its usual activity, a controlled, technicians meticulously monitoring the intricate machines. No one, not dedicated staff nor vulnerable patient, shifting from mundane medical routine to a profound, orchestrated nightmare. Healthy ranged into critically dangerous, profoundly life-threatening territory within moments. A catastrophic collapse of her cardiovascular system. Electronic warnings slicing through the clinic's previously calm atmosphere with alarming, undeniable authority. The alarms and the alerts were going off, their piercing electronic wails signaling a rapidly escalating life-threatening medical emergency, instantly transforming the previously serene treatment space into a scene of frantic, urgent, and intense medical activity. Nurses and technicians, their faces now etched with profound alarm. Well-rehearsed emergency protocols designed to stabilize a patient in such dire and unexpected crisis. The need for advanced high-level medical intervention was immediate. Without hesitation, following established emergency procedures, they call an ambulance. And in a stroke of remarkable fortune that could only come from it's small enough that the ambulance is less than 2 minutes away. Provided absolutely precious seconds in a desperate race against time, a furious, valiant attempt by dedicated professionals to pull Fran back from the precipice of imminent death. The terrifying severity of her condition necessitated a higher, more intensive level of specialized care, prompting a critical, emergency transfer. Then they moved to the hospital. Every professional skill at hand, in a desperate struggle against an unseen, malevolent force. A phone call that immediately signals grave concern and portends an impending tragedy. Had relied on a trusted medical professional to convey the agonizing details. My dad had had the nurse call me from the hospital. The presence of an intermediary added another layer of urgency and profound emotional weight to the message. Or, simply because her father was too overwhelmed to speak directly, passing the terrible burden of communication to a fellow caregiver. The message delivered was terse, clinically restrained, professionally muted, and I need to get there fast. The phrase "some issues," a vague and carefully chosen clinical euphemism, subtly hinting at complications beyond the norm without overtly stating the dire truth. Rapidly escalating race against an irreversible physiological tide, implying that every passing moment was critical. Every second counted in a fight for a life that was tragically, inexorably, slipping away. For Wanda, crisis that was unfolding in real time, portending the very end of her beloved mother's life. She immediately dropped everything. To her trained medical eye, made absolutely no physiological or professional sense whatsoever. Desperate hope and mounting, unspeakable dread, a heart-wrenching race against an invisible, brutal deadline. A desperate race against time for Wanda Metcalf. But upon her arrival, filled with an increasingly heavy sense of premonition. A moment that would forever be seared into her memory, a profound trauma she would carry throughout her life. When I get there, she had already passed. Respectful solemnity of wary medical professionals, the stark, brutal truth of death's absolute landed with the force of an unendurable, profound, and soul-shattering blow. The crushing grief was immediate, overwhelming, and utterly profound, consuming her in its icy grip. Yet, even in her raw anguish, a profoundly distressing professional honed by over 33 years of dedicated nursing experience. This was not a typical end to a life marked by chronic illness, however severe. From my understanding, it is very rare for someone on dialysis to go into cardiac arrest, she reflected, articulating the deeply unsettling medical contradiction at the heart of their profound the point where the clinical facts simply did not align with the tragic reality of her mother's sudden demise. The very purpose of dialysis, as she knew intimately from her decades of professional practice, was to stabilize and improve patient health, inevitably lead to such a catastrophic and sudden event as cardiac arrest. Was, in her extensive professional experience and across every statistical analysis she was aware of, clanging alarm bell resounding not only within her own professional psyche, but mirroring the growing collective unease of the entire. The personal shock was immense, radiating far beyond the immense grief of losing a beloved mother, an utterly incomprehensible nature of her passing under such specific and bewildering circumstances. To preserve health, not too abruptly and inexplicably ended without warning. This was simply not the expected, gradual progression of illness. It felt profoundly wrong. A fundamental violation of core medical principles and the sacred bond of human trust inherent in patient care. Unshakable, professional, medical unease quickly crystallized into a fierce, unwavering, and utterly relentless determination that would not be deterred by platitudes or superficial explanations. I just really want to know why this happened. It became the singular, driving, indefatigable force behind her relentless pursuit of answers, however devastating, but to the horrifying discovery of premeditated malice. Her insistent, unyielding demand for why was not just a lament, revealing a darkness far more profound than any illness. And to profoundly understand the depth of the injustice woven into her final moments, it is absolutely essential to examine the long, resilient, and remarkably courageous arc of her life. Fran Metcalf was born on August 3, and from her earliest, tender years, fate had cruelly intervened, as very quickly she faced serious health issues that would shape her entire existence. Her childhood was not one of carefree innocence and boundless play, widespread illness. My mother had polio at a very young age, Wanda recounted, meticulously explaining the genesis of her mother's lifelong physical challenges. Had an insidious, profound, so she struggled with mobility and had to have braces on her legs. These cumbersome, often uncomfortable, and conspicuously visible braces, forcing her to confront and courageously overcome profound physical obstacles that others, less afflicted, effortlessly took for granted. Each step, each deliberate movement, was a testament to her profound willpower, an act of sheer determination. The persistent shadow of her debilitating disability, unfortunately, extended far beyond the purely physical, an overall quality of life during her formative and crucial childhood and adolescent years. As she got older, her disability was affecting her a lot in school. Painful physical therapy sessions designed to restore some degree of function collectively presented significant and often overwhelming hurdles that hampered her academic and social integration. Her education was not great, Wanda observed with a note of poignant regret. Rather than any inherent lack of intellectual capacity or desire for learning, she spent a lot of time in the hospital, often far from her familiar home environment, away from the comforting familiarity of family and friends, fostering a quiet stoicism and a deep understanding of human frailty. Yet, even within the unrelenting confines of her debilitating illness, and the immense burdens it relentlessly placed upon her, in exquisitely beautiful ways, surprisingly offered a glimpse of something profoundly hopeful, something deeply positive, and something unexpectedly romantic that emerged directly from her adversity, a profound counterpoint to her suffering. Vulnerabilities can sometimes inadvertently lead to unexpected blessings, gently preparing the reader for a tender, life-altering turning point in her intensely personal narrative, one that showcased her enduring capacity for love, connection, and profound human resilience. It was amidst the necessary and often demanding medical treatments that fundamentally characterized Fran Metcalf's, yet challenging, youth that a truly remarkable twist of fate profoundly unfolded, profound depth, and unwavering strength. As a young woman, her treatments, rigorous and unyielding in their medical necessity, a man who would become her steadfast companion and devoted partner through the numerous joys and inevitable trials of life. Ironically, of pragmatic medical necessity, added a tender, romantic, a poignant testament to fate's intricate dance, a counterpoint to her years of quiet suffering, due to the limited specialized medical care available in her immediate home region, particularly for complex and long-standing medical conditions like those she faced due to the enduring effects of polio. Extensive and often arduous travel for highly specialized treatment was frequently and unavoidably required. There were bigger hospitals on the Gulf Coast, Wanda explained, patiently outlining the pragmatic and often inconvenient reasons for their frequent and lengthy journeys across the state. These often arduous and physically demanding trips. It was during one such pivotal visit to Port Arthur that the entire course of her life irrevocably shifted. She met my dad that was in the Coast Guard. Their initial encounter was immediate and magnetic. They just hit it off. He was good-looking, and Mother fell head over heels in love. The swiftness and profound depth of their mutual affection and burgeoning passion were clear and undeniable. Challenging circumstances, transforming a medical obligation into an unexpected wellspring of profound joy and enduring companionship. The practicalities of his dedicated military service, however, necessarily dictated the accelerated pace of their courtship and their momentous decision-making process. Their love story was a whirlwind of profound connection, deep mutual attraction, and pragmatic necessity. A testament to a bond strong enough to bypass typical social timelines and bravely shared desire for a united, shared future, providing Fran with a devoted, steadfast lifetime partner who would stand by her through all of life's ensuing joys and considerable. Truly a powerful silver lining to her enduring health struggles and a beautiful chapter in her resilient life story. Their love was a beacon against the storm of her illness, a testament to hope. From their whirlwind, Coast Guard accelerator romance, and the swift, anchored by a deep and abiding affection and a powerful sense of shared purpose, successfully built a loving, bustling home. A powerful testament to their enduring partnership and unwavering commitment to one another. Together, they proudly raised 4 children, all firmly anchored by their deep commitment to one another and to the nurturing of their burgeoning beloved family. One of their children, their thoughtful, observant, with her mother's own quiet aspirations, her innate caregiving spirit, and her lifelong, intimate, and often arduous journey through the complex world of chronic health challenges. Wanda went on to become a nurse, dedicating her entire professional life, perhaps unconsciously fulfilling a vocational dream that her own mother herself often mused upon, the undeniable, almost instinctive nurturing instinct that permeated her very being, extending far beyond her immediate family. However, the stark physical realities of her mother's long-standing polio, and its subsequent, numerous complications, tragically presented insurmountable barriers to entering such a physically demanding, acknowledging the practical, profound, and debilitating physical limitations that regretfully closed off that esteemed career path for Fran. Fran, with her characteristic grace, unwavering, quiet strength, and profound commitment to her children's future, meticulously instilled a deep and abiding sense of care, of professional duty, and of unwavering dedication in her daughter. She did this not only through her powerful, personal example of resilience in the face of suffering, but also through active, practical support during Wanda's own rigorous and demanding nursing education. Particularly during Wanda's arduous nursing studies, she was there for my graduation. This was not just a momentous, celebratory occasion for Wanda alone, celebrating an educational achievement that transcended the physical hurdles Fran herself had once faced, a quiet testament to her indomitable spirit. Fran was a constant, attentive, and comforting presence. She was there to bring me a cup of coffee at night when I was studying, just to make sure that I had everything that I needed. These quiet, tender, altruistic desire to see them thrive, to reach their fullest potential, unfettered by the limitations she herself had faced. It was a powerful, beautiful, intergenerational legacy of empathy. An utterly unjust death, all the more poignant and devastating for Wanda. Its richness immeasurably deepened and eternally enriched by the burgeoning warmth and delightful chaos of a new. She delighted in becoming a grandmother to 8 grandchildren, and deeply involved presence in their lives. Her energy and remarkable capacity for dedicated involvement were truly formidable when it came to her family, a powerful testament to her vibrant, enduring spirit and her innate desire for connection. She was wonderful at, an utterly indispensable figure at the heart of the family's active social and celebratory life. She was, with unwavering enthusiasm, a deeply engaged and proactive participant, cherishing every moment and every milestone. She cheered them on from the bleachers with an unbridled passion. My youngest daughter's basketball games, the boys, played baseball. Wanda detailed her familiar, beloved, deeply empathetic humanity. She was a very loving person. She just loved to be surrounded by people, listen to stories. Fran genuinely thrived on human interaction, and subtly contributing her own quiet wisdom, gentle humor, and reassuring presence to every conversation. Who skillfully connected friends and acquaintances, weaving disparate individuals into a larger, comforting sense of belonging and familial warmth in every social setting she graced with her presence. Her life, even with its inherent, profound, and often painful challenges, was a powerful, a rich tapestry meticulously woven with robust threads of deep familial love and vibrant communal joy, a poignant portrait of a life lived fully. Characterized her challenging journey, gradually leading her closer to the life-sustaining, yet profoundly vulnerable, environment of the dialysis clinic, where her fate would ultimately and tragically be sealed by an act of unimaginable malice. The profound continuation of Fran Metcalf's significant and escalating health struggles, one that irrevocably altered the trajectory of her already complex medical journey and intensified her dependency on external interventions. Even with the most diligent and meticulous management through diet, exercise, and medication, brought with it its own complex management requirements and a formidable host of potential long-term to a critical and irreversible deterioration of her renal function, signifying advanced kidney damage, and when her kidneys worsened, plummeting into a stage of irreversible renal failure, and utterly urgent, she was prescribed dialysis treatments. Fran became a regular patient at the Lufkin Clinic, meticulously integrating its demanding 3-times-a-week schedule into the very rhythm and fabric of her life, an absolutely indispensable fixture in her weekly routine. And her profound capacity for human connection found another kind of family. This new, unique community, composed of fellow patients and dedicated caregivers grappling with similar life-threatening challenges, in this shared crucible of chronic illness and ongoing vulnerability. Genuine bonds of mutual support. She made many friends, Wanda observed, highlighting her mother's enduring capacity for connection even under difficult medically challenging circumstances. Fostered such intense and intimate bonds of camaraderie and empathy. You are set beside someone for 3 to 4 hours, subtly transforming what could otherwise be an isolating and psychologically taxing medical ordeal into this natural camaraderie and sense of shared humanity, often extended beyond purely patient-to-patient connections, organically drawing in the dedicated caregivers themselves, even the nursing staff, the whole thing. It becomes a family, Wanda aptly observed, her words powerfully capturing the deep emotional investment, an almost grotesque counterpoint to the insidious horror that would soon engulf the clinic, transforming a presumed safe haven, a beacon of life-sustaining care, into a terrifying, inescapable landscape of extreme vulnerability. The friendships that offered such vital comfort and emotional solace, forged in the crucible of shared medical challenge, turning what was once a bastion of support and safety into an insidious, terrifying, with a cold precision that mocked every humanistic principle. The deeply established routine of Fran Metcalf's regular dialysis treatments, maintenance of her precarious health, suddenly and inexplicably culminated in unspeakable tragedy. It was a brutal, abrupt end to a life lived with quiet resilience, abruptly and cruelly severing her cherished connections to her beloved family and her vibrant community, but from a profound and bewildering struggle to comprehend precisely how it could have happened. This was a sudden, catastrophic collapse, actively undergoing a procedure specifically designed to stabilize her system. It defied all expectations, every medical precedent they knew, and every instinct they possessed. For Wanda Metcalf, whose extensive, the circumstances surrounding her mother's death were deeply anomalous, even professionally perplexing to her very core, simply did not align with a natural cause in such a controlled, monitored environment. You don't expect, typically, for a dialysis patient to have a heart attack or get worse during dialysis, she clarified, articulating the stark medical contradiction at the absolute heart of their profound bewilderment. Wanda explained, detailing the fundamental therapeutic goal and physiological function of the complex procedure. It was fundamentally designed to alleviate the immense strain on the cardiovascular system by diligently and precisely removing harmful toxins, dangerous excess fluids, thereby reducing the risk of cardiac events, not provoking them, certainly not in such a sudden, catastrophic manner. For a patient to suffer such a fatal physiological reversal, a catastrophic and irreversible cardiac arrest, in every professional estimation, statistical analysis, and ethical expectation, an exceedingly rare and, crucially, deeply suspicious event, an insistent, medical community involved. It was a statistical impossibility that felt profoundly orchestrated. The emotional impact on Wanda, raw and profoundly deep, was immense, agonizing. I think that one of the hardest things for me was not to be able to have a goodbye moment with my mom. This agonizing inability to exchange last words of love and comfort, to share a final, intimate connection, was a profoundly agonizing aspect of her grief. To push beyond the vague explanations that satisfied no one, and merely offered platitudes, horrifying possibility of deliberate malfeasance, for the deepest truth of her mother's passing, but a profound, unstoppable forensic impact. In the hushed, grief-laden hospital room, an atmosphere thick with unspoken sorrow, abrupt denial of a proper farewell, Wanda instinctively performed one last, tender act of profound filial devotion, an intimate gesture of pure, unadulterated love, an almost unconscious ritual to honor the woman who had given her life. So I reached down and I kissed her on the cheek. This simple, intimate gesture, a final act of profound love. Even in the bleak face of death's ultimate, uncompromising finality, it was a daughter's final touch, an instinctive farewell. Was a violent, shocking, and profoundly disorienting assault on her senses. An experience that abruptly and brutally shattered the solemnity of the moment, forever polluting its sanctity. And, with terrifying clarity, it planted a chilling, undeniable seed of profound. When I did, there was a horrible smell that burned my eyes and my nostrils. The odor was not faint or ambiguous, not the usual clinical scent of a hospital, nor the lingering, familiar smell of illness. And chemically aggressive, causing an immediate, involuntary, and violent physical recoil. Her eyes stung with a searing, chemical irritation, so potent it felt as though acid had been splashed into them, as if she had just inhaled a potent, corrosive irritant directly into her delicate nasal passages. The very air around her mother's deceased form seemed tainted. Unyielding blade, chilling her to her very core. She smelled like bleach. This specific, powerful, and overwhelmingly persistent odor, so profoundly, jarringly out of place on a human body in any medical setting, life-sustaining medical procedure of dialysis, struck Wanda with the undeniable force of a blaring, internal, professional alarm bell. Eradication and rigorous hygiene had absolutely no legitimate, ethical, or innocuous reason to be intimately associated with her mother's final repose. Its pervasive presence, stark, potent, and unmistakably caustic. This was not a subtle, passing scent. It was an invasive chemical presence, robust, persistent, and undeniably corrosive, destructive substance. An innate sense refined by countless hours of patient care and keen observation. This single, unequivocal, and profoundly disturbing domain of undeniable forensic evidence. This potent, chemical smell, a sensory footprint of unimaginable violence. A silent, yet piercing accusation that screamed, with an unbearable clarity, of deliberate foul play, into something far more sinister, meticulously premeditated, and utterly, unspeakably criminal. The seemingly innocuous, tender act of a final, loving kiss had, hardening their resolve to find justice for their beloved mother. In the immediate, devastating aftermath of Fran Metcalf's sudden, perplexing, and now deeply suspicious death, the direct scientific connection between the caustic scent and her demise was still agonizingly missing from the objective. Life ignited within them an unwavering and collective determination. They were resolved, unequivocally and fiercely, to meticulously find out what truly went wrong, to push relentlessly beyond the vague explanations and professional equivocations that satisfied no one and merely offered unsatisfying platitudes. Gripping its residents in a pervasive chill of fear, a pattern so stark, so statistically improbable, it defied every conventional expectation of medical probability and random chance. Unfortunately, Fran wasn't the only death at the clinic that day. Emergent pattern of fatality that could no longer, under any circumstances, be ignored, dismissed, or rationalized. Resilient fabric of the Lufkin community, representing another cherished pillar of local life. Claire Strange was a grandmother, a period that had undoubtedly instilled in her a profound resilience, a pragmatic tenacity, and an unshakable approach to life's numerous and often immense challenges, contributing tirelessly to the agricultural backbone of the region, embodying the very spirit of rural Texas. Her life was simple, honorable, purposeful, and deeply connected to the land and her tightly knit community. She went to church regularly, finding solace, strength. She was an integral part of the tight-knit community, forming an indispensable part of its communal identity. Furthermore, unexpected and completely unexplained demise, all the more alarming, unsettling, and undeniably suspicious. Claire Strange was, in every sense, unexplained death, dramatically heightened the pervasive sense of tragedy. The morning of April 1, 2008, for Claire Strange, life-sustaining dialysis schedule, offering no hint whatsoever of the cataclysmic, terminal event to come. At the time of April 1, when she went to visit the dialysis facility, she was screened as normal. Her health assessment offered no immediate red flags, No unusual symptoms or critical developments that would portend danger. And the overall prognosis for her treatment day was entirely positive, and without any perceived complication. Based on her consistent medical history, her years of successful dialysis, and the expected efficacy of the established dialysis procedure, and the attending medical staff, a macabre mirroring of the day's profound tragedy. To be dismissed as mere happenstance, transforming the tragic into the terrifying, and simultaneously intensified her already keen professional suspicions. The initial, quiet shock and profound personal sorrow quickly transmuted into a chilling epiphany. Mother wasn't the only one. Emergent pattern of fatalities, a macabre echo that resonated with sinister implications, connecting multiple lives in a terrifying dance of death. The connection was even more poignant and emotionally resonant, lending a layer of deep personal significance to the two initial deaths. Claire Strange was a name that Mom had mentioned. These two women, connected not only by their shared medical vulnerability and the unique, mirroring each other's end with devastating precision. The statistical improbability of these events was simply staggering. They both went into cardiac arrests within 30 minutes of each other. To have two patients die on the same day, especially under such specific, observed an investigator, this was no longer a matter for epidemiology or statistical probability alone, an unmistakable indicator of foul play. Local law enforcement agencies began to undergo a profound and unsettling reorientation, a fundamental shift in perspective. Or what elusive technical error occurred that could explain this cascade of events? What is going on there? What was happening to these patients? The investigative focus had pivoted sharply, with chilling implication. An unseen, diabolical hand deliberately inflicting lethal harm. The sense of pervasive dread and chilling helplessness only deepened with further tragic news that underscored the relentless, the inexplicable deaths continue. Understand, and ultimately stop them. Often succumbed with alarming swiftness to their sudden collapse, exhibiting the same disturbing physiological markers, underscoring the lethal efficiency of the attacks. The sheer efficiency, the brutal suddenness, and the lethal and highly potent method, a precise mechanism of harm that left little to no chance for survival or recovery. This was a highly effective, deliberate, and repeated method of killing, a systematic approach to extinguishing life. Nor an environmental contaminant, but a cold, calculating human killing machine. And then, amid the mounting, pervasive terror, the frantic, and the agonizing inability of law enforcement to immediately pinpoint the perpetrator, a pivotal, groundbreaking, and profoundly incriminating moment arrived. Those most vulnerable individuals whose very lives depended on the clinic, and whose perception, sharpened by fear and uncertainty, had inadvertently become the keenest weapon against the unseen predator, terrifying clarity that transformed it, irrevocably, into crucial, incriminating evidence. Communal treatment room, a flicker of abnormal action amidst the expected mundane routines of patient care, signaling a direct and premeditated act of deadly preparation. Someone walked over to a bleach solution bucket on the floor and drew out that solution into a syringe. Nor the blare of an ambulance siren signaling external emergency, but a quiet, covert, premeditated act, witnessed by the very vulnerable individuals whose lives were implicitly and imminently being threatened by the person committing the act. The seemingly routine object, a cleaning bucket typically filled with a mundane a terrifying weaponized vessel, the common medical instrument, a syringe, a universal symbol of healing, precision, destructive power. This was no accident, no systemic failure, no natural tragedy. Soon to be reported as a pivotal, undeniable piece of the unfolding criminal narrative, irrevocably ending the hunt for an unseen disease and initiating the hunt for a remorseless killer. The courage of these patients, having witnessed what they instinctively recognized as an act of profound, into a dialysis patient's lines, was the fulcrum upon which the entire investigation turned. Intuitive suspicion into cold, hard, scientific fact. The Lufkin Police Department, now in full command of what was unmistakably a crime scene of unprecedented scale for their jurisdiction, faced an immense, meticulous task of evidence collection and preliminary analysis. Were now critical vaults of potential forensic evidence, a staggering number that underscored the daunting scope of the challenge and the sheer volume of material to be processed. The police department took each container, painstakingly and with painstaking precision took each syringe out and labeled them and tested them with litmus paper, a common and effective chemical indicator. The results were conclusive, and it tested positive for a basic solution. This irrefutable chemical confirmation, the unmistakable presence of a strong alkaline substance within numerous syringes. So it supported the story of Miss Hamilton that bleach had been in the syringe. This tangible, chemical proof, swiftly obtained and undeniably accurate. The logical incongruity of the killer's chosen method. There was no reason for anyone to ever use a syringe to draw bleach in, to measure it. It simply wasn't standard, or even remotely acceptable, medical or hygiene practice. Articulating the glaring absurdity and fundamental medical logic of using a sterile, precise medical instrument in such an uncharacteristic, reckless, and unprofessional manner. This inherent lack of any legitimate medical rationale for such an action unequivocally underscored the malevolent intent behind it, but a deliberate act of subversion. The sheer deviation from established norms screamed of purpose, not error. 2 days into their intensive, detectives scheduled and conducted their initial formal interview with the accused nurse, Kimberly Seams. The setting for this critical encounter was controlled, allowing the investigators to observe and listen without directly tipping their hand. The atmosphere, however, was taut with unstated accusations. To self-incriminate through her inevitable attempts to deflect, rationalize, or explain away the unexpected. This observational strategy allowed them to gauge her demeanor, her spontaneous reactions, and the narrative she would attempt to construct. Unprecedented closure, and her abrupt dismissal from work, rather than waiting for direct accusation, immediately launched into a rambling, defensive preamble. It was an elaborate facade of manufactured concern and professional anxiety before any direct, formal accusations were even put to her. We've only been here 8 months. I'm just constantly, are you okay? Are you okay about your head? To cast herself as an overly dedicated, empathetic, but ultimately powerless. The phrase scared they're gonna stroke out was a particularly dark piece of linguistic craftsmanship, innocent explanation for causing the very cardiac arrests and severe claiming it was already cracked, a clumsy, self-serving fabrication that completely defied the actual medical facts. Then, during this self-serving, seemingly spontaneous monologue, the critical tell, undeniably confirming the detective's most profound suspicions, spontaneously goes on the defense. Clearly aware she had been reported by patients regarding the use of an unauthorized, corrosive substance. What hurts me the most is for 2 patients to accuse me of giving another patient medication that was not a word. Her phrasing was curious, highly specific. This was a lie of deliberate omission, carefully constructed to maintain a semblance of innocence, while avoiding direct falsehood about what she injected. Where did you give her any medicine? I did give her some saline, only because she said she was pregnant. This detail about saline for a supposed pregnancy was a transparent fabrication, utterly without medical basis in that specific context. A weak, innocent explanation for a syringe that was visually observed by patients. But then came the most glaring and disturbing admission, a colossal, entirely unprompted by the detectives, brought up the issue of bleach and sort of suggested ways that bleach could have gotten into the patients, desperately trying to plant alternative theories in the investigators' minds. Her proactive, unprompted discussion of bleach, prior to the police even mentioning what the actual allegations were, before the police had explicitly stated any specific allegations to her, was a giant, waving red flag. A glaring neon sign pointing directly to guilt and pre-knowledge of the specific crime being investigated. That brings up red flags in and of itself, because we hadn't told her what the allegations were. The astute investigator analytically observed, to sow confusion before clarity could set in, a powerful form of circumstantial evidence of her guilt. Police, armed with their extensive professional knowledge of clinical procedure, immediately understood the clear, unambiguous boundaries of bleach usage in a healthcare setting, certainly not for cleaning or sterilizing internal components that come into contact with a patient's bloodstream, for drawing with syringes for measurement within the immediate patient care area. 1 part bleach to 10 parts water is used as a disinfectant for external cleaning. The detectives pressed her on her absurd explanation. You use a syringe to pull your 10 cc's of bleach up. Her response, laden with evasiveness and weak justifications, further exposed her lies. Sometimes I do when I can't find a seg. I love the little medicines cups, but if you use a syringe to 10 cc's, then you're going to have to, put it in the receptacle. The kind of clumsy rationalization that only someone without true remorse or a firm, completely detached from the stringent professional reality of nursing. Her attempts at witty self-justification were, in fact, pathetic admissions of intellectual weakness and glaring incompetence, revealing a profound lack of judgment that was itself terrifying in a medical professional. I don't know what's going on here, and it's just scary. The feigned innocence, the pathetic plea for enlightenment. To position herself as a confused, overwhelmed caregiver rather than the cold, calculating, and remorseless serial killer she was becoming evident to be. Her dramatic expressions of fear and bewilderment were a cynical form of psychological misdirection. Despite the compelling circumstantial evidence, the stark eyewitness accounts, operating meticulously within the strict confines of legal procedure, respecting the fundamental rights of the accused until irrefutable, and she is allowed to leave. The investigator noted, highlighting the critical fact that the immediate danger to this preventative measure, while a disruption, was paramount to ensuring no further harm. I mean, it's frustrating. You may have a good idea in your head what happened, but until you can prove it, you understand you have to let them go, albeit temporarily and under strict monitoring conditions. Profoundly highlighted the rigorous demands of evidence-based justice. Incontrovertible facts that meet the high burden of proof required in a criminal prosecution. After the initial, deeply unsettling interview with Kimberly Scenes, which provided a wealth of circumstantial and behavioral clues, the police remained diligent, committed to building an ironclad case. The medical equipment involved in the patient incidents, syringes that showed indications of having bleach they sent to a lab, dispatching them to highly specialized forensic laboratories equipped with the advanced capabilities, moving beyond preliminary litmus tests to precise quantitative and qualitative identification. The sheer volume of material designated as crucial evidence was immense, reflecting the pervasive nature of the attacks. This occurred over the period of about 3 or 4 days. The meticulous, advanced chemical analysis of these crucial pieces of evidence. Objective, chemical certainty, confirming the earlier field tests with absolute precision. The first thing we did was we identified that, yes, bleach was present in those sharps containers, and then this was categorical chemical confirmation. Easily disproven claim of using syringes for measuring. Then we started trying to counteract that argument that she had used it for measuring. We actually subpoenaed all the purchase orders to prove that there was cups always available. This simple, undeniable procurement record. A mundane, bureaucratic paper trail. Critical days, proving her story to be an outright lie. Furthermore, the human element, the consistent, ethical professional practices of her colleagues, was also meticulously explored and documented to expose the individualistic nature of her heinous acts. We also interviewed each employee to see if they'd ever heard of that being a practice, or seen that being a practice. Professionally amateurish fabrication. A transparent and pathetic attempt to obfuscate her true, malicious intent. There was simply no professional precedent, no ethical justification. Her carefully constructed defense, a fragile edifice built on deceit, provided an absolutely crucial, if heartbreaking, break in the stagnating criminal investigation, unexpectedly catapulting it forward. Her husband filed for a divorce. Coincided, perhaps predictably for a criminal psychologist studying the external manifestations of inner turmoil, indicating a deeply turbulent existence simmering beneath a composed professional exterior. Her husband, Kevin, experiencing profound marital distress and exasperation, he was fed up, transforming him into an unexpected key informant. He actually contacted the police department, demonstrating immense civic courage despite the immense personal cost. And during the process of that, he had found that she had a search history for using the word he, a profoundly disturbing curiosity, specifically focused not just on her work, on the very means to compromise it with lethal intent, legitimizing the forensic examination of her personal digital devices. The digital forensic examination of her seized computers became a crucial and terrifying window into her hidden intentions, revealing a profound and chilling premeditation that definitively solidified the capital murder charges against her. Utterly chilling. They found searches on the computer about the effect of bleach on patients. This was no accident, no benign curiosity, no random browsing. an intellectual deep dive into the precise physiological mechanisms of its destruction on the human body. And, in a chilling, almost mocking echo of her earlier, born of a twisted desire to perfect the crime, to understand the forensic challenges of her method, and to meticulously ensure that the chemical signature of her monstrous acts remained untraceable. People died on that day, provided irrefutable evidence of profound, calculated executions, solidifying the charges of serial murder beyond any reasonable doubt. The digital footprint became a chilling, silent confession of unparalleled depravity. As the rigorous forensic testing, meticulous evidence analyses, the two surviving patients who had initially fallen into medically induced comas due to her poisonings, sadly and inexorably passed away after prolonged suffering. 63-year-old Cora Bryant and 58-year-old Garland Kelly Jr. finally succumbed to the irreversible ravages wrought by the deliberate bleach injections. Garland Kelly's daughter recounted their family's heart-wrenching vigil. And we had scriptures all over the wall, and we just believed God that he would wake up, you know. Their profound faith, their unwavering hope, their tireless prayers, ultimately, and tragically, could not overcome the insidious chemical destruction, physiological chaos inflicted upon him by the callous actions of Kimberly Scenes. Their prayers for awakening were not answered by medical recovery, but by the ultimate piece of death, a direct consequence of a murderous hand. The full and horrific tally of victims connected to Scenes emerged with undeniable clarity, turning the earlier allegations of individual harm into a horrifying, confirmed reality of a systematic, serial murder, escalating the case beyond mere suspicion into one of undeniable. The initial suspicions had tragically blossomed into a full-blown criminal nightmare. Despite the mounting, undeniable, and comprehensive circumstantial eyewitness, to definitively charge her for these deaths, to secure a conviction in a rigorous court of law, the standard of proof required was exceptionally high, particularly given the medical complexities of the victims, the introduction that bleach had caused their deaths. This was the critical missing piece, bypassing any reasonable doubt regarding cause of death, and at that time, it wasn't there or available to us. The very novelty of the chosen weapon, a corrosive common household chemical administered within a medical context, body simply didn't exist in established scientific literature. The moral imperative, however, burned brightly and powerfully within the investigative team. There's somebody that I believe that committed multiple murders on multiple occasions, and she's walking the street, so holding her accountable was a priority. The profound sense of responsibility to the victims, to their grieving families, and to the wider community of Lufkin was paramount, relentlessly driving the investigators onward in their tenacious quest for absolute scientific proof. They would not rest until justice, undeniably and scientifically, was served. Investigators in Lufkin, Texas, found themselves confronting an unparalleled and profoundly unique challenge, a forensic puzzle that demanded ingenuity and a significant leap beyond conventional methods, particularly in victims whose underlying medical conditions often complicated post-mortem analysis. The mechanism of injury was the clandestine introduction of bleach into dialysis lines, and there's very little established research where bleach has been specifically studied, meant that standard forensic toxicology protocols for definitively proving its lethal effects in a human, posing an immense and unprecedented challenge to the investigators and their collaborating forensic scientists. This required profound innovation and meticulous, exploratory science. Then, a crucial visual detail, a distinct physical anomaly from Garland Kelly's initial. The black clot seen by a technician going through Garland Kelly's line provides a possible clue. This visually distinct anomaly, an aberrant, dark mass in a typically red bloodline. We suspected that bleach might change the color of blood, the investigators surmised, forming a critical hypothesis. They devised an ingenious, but powerfully illustrative experiment that meticulously replicated the suspected effect, which is bright red from Sergeant Abbott, ensuring the blood sample was fresh and representative, and we dropped some bleach in it and it immediately turned black. The simple, horrifying experiment provided stark, undeniable visual and scientific confirmation of their hypothesis, signaling immediate and profound cellular destruction. This simple, yet powerful, visual confirmation began to unveil the physical signature of the insidious poison. The next, and crucial, step was to understand the precise biological mechanism of the profound destruction inflicted on a cellular level within the human body. The forensic analyst explained, meticulously piecing together the visual clues with cutting-edge scientific understanding. Oxygen-carrying blood cells released critical intracellular components, particularly a dangerous surge of potassium, into the bloodstream. If enough blood cells explode or burst, this releases potassium. Potassium gets to the heart, causes cardiac arrest. The meticulous physiological explanation unveiled the brutal biological mechanism of death. Electrically chaotic failure of the heart, a sudden and fatal cardiac arrest. A deeply empathetic and intuitive understanding of her mother's suffering now gained a dreadful scientific resonance and validation. What it probably felt like to my mom was being burned from the inside out. It was scientifically validated as a brutal physiological reality. I can't imagine the pain that they went through. The profound grief was now compounded by the agonizing intellectual, a burden that weighed heavily on the investigators, fueling their relentless pursuit of absolute, irrefutable justice. This combination of scientific rigor and profound human empathy underscored the true heroism of the investigative forces. Detectives faced yet another. This was the logical, compelling, and extensively supported conclusion, especially in patients who were already generally health compromised, particularly with patients who were already suffering from existing severe, life-threatening chronic conditions like kidney failure, was exceptionally high. This potential defense strategy necessitated a definitive, but, critically, there was no ordinary medical blood test to test for the presence of bleach in a way that could stand up in court. This presented a daunting, seemingly insurmountable forensic challenge that threatened to undermine the entire case. Leap in forensic toxicology that would marry disparate fields of scientific inquiry. We got a real break in the case when we found an expert who had been doing studies with rats involving chlorine gas. Complex investigation. A profoundly serendipitous connection across seemingly unrelated scientific disciplines that would ultimately provide the irrefutable evidence. And chlorine is basically the same thing as bleach, the expert explained. Household bleach used as the murder weapon. This specialized toxicological expert possessed a unique and invaluable understanding of detecting the subtle, precisely the highly specialized expertise required to definitively solve this unprecedented case. A definitive chemical signature of bleach-induced cellular. Undeniably conclusive breakthrough result. The evidence was now categorical, irrefutable, and absolutely devastating to the potential defense. With this unprecedented forensic breakthrough, they were unequivocally confirmed to be the targeted casualties of deliberate, chemically induced murder. With all the scientific puzzle pieces finally falling into place, definitively linking the bleach to the precise cause of death and outlining the devastating physiological mechanism. Investigators now had to conclusively tie Kimberly Scenes to these horrific acts in a manner that would withstand the most rigorous trial. They had established the motive, Kimberly Scenes, directly and unassailably to every single act of poisoning. The solution, which proved devastatingly effective in its simplicity and factual weight. A seemingly mundane bureaucratic paper trail that ultimately held the final, undeniable clue to her pervasive presence. They looked at the employment records, tracing her shifts, her specific assignments, and her proximity to patients. The discovery was stark, undeniable, and utterly damning, and the only employee that was present for every cardiac event was Kimberly Scenes. Malicious thread woven through the very fabric of care. Her pervasive presence, a silent, ubiquitous witness to every cardiac arrest. Irrefutable digital footprints, and now groundbreaking. The Lufkin Police Department, working with prosecutors, presented their overwhelming findings to the grand jury. We presented it to the grand jury, detailing the sheer depth of depravity and the calculated nature of the crimes. We had 5 murder victims, and we had 5 people that we believe were injured by the injection of bleach, that did not die but recovered. Delivered a swift and unequivocal decision, affirming the gravity and certainty of the charges, marking the official legal recognition of Kimberly Scenes as a serial killer. They returned an indictment for capital murder, and then 5 counts of aggravated assault. They agreed with us. The grand jury's robust decision affirmed the gravity and certainty of the charges, marking the official legal recognition of Kimberly Scenes as a serial killer and initiating the path to her prosecution. There was no probable cause to issue an arrest warrant. Kim and she was ultimately arrested April the 9th of 2009. nearly a year after the first tragic deaths and months after her initial questioning. She was held on a significant bond. She had a $500,000 bond. The financial burden of such a bond was substantial, yet for a short, agonizing period, to the profound dismay and anger of the community and the victims' families, she was able to secure her temporary release on bail, a legal provision that felt like a profound injustice. We heard word through the community that she was bonded out, sparking renewed fear and outrage. Kimberly Scenes, in her public persona, was widely described as shy, kind, sweet. This outwardly unassuming and gentle demeanor made the reality of her monstrous acts almost impossible.